Good evening. Township of Edison Zoning Board of Adjustment Special Meeting of January 24th, 2023 is now in session. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975, has been provided by the annual notice published in the Home News and Tribune on January 14th, 2023, has been posted in the main lobby of the municipal complex on January 3rd, 2023. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Mr. Ayer?
Here.
Mrs. Shaw?
Present.
Mr. Bignell? Mr. Carley? Not here. Mr. Chabra?
Here.
Ms. Hernandez-Prince?
Here.
Mr. Soretto?
Here.
Mr. Barone?
Here.
Mr. Patel?
Here.
Mr. DeVay?
Here.
Mr. Sadaha?
Here.
Vice Chair O'Gorman?
Here.
And Chairman Kamba?
Here. Okay. We have one case that has been postponed, case Z3 2021, 401 Division Street LLC. It has been carried to March 28th, 2023, with no renotice required. If you're here for 401 Division Street, that case will not be heard tonight. It will be heard on March 28th. We're going to move forward on the agenda to adoption and consideration of adoption of minutes. Madam Secretary?
Okay. So for minutes, August 30th, 2022, and August 30th, 2022, closed session. September 13th, 2022, and September 13th, 2022, closed session. September 20th, 2022, October 18th, 2022, and October 18th, 2022, closed session. October 25th, 2022, November 22, 2022, November 29, 2022, and November 29, 2022, closed session, and December 13th, 2022.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion made.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Barone,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Soretto,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Patel,
Yes on the motion.
Ms. Hernandez-Prince,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. DeVay,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Sadaha,
Yes on the motion.
Vice Chair O'Gorman,
Yes on the motion.
and Chairman Kamba.
Yes on the motion. All right, opening statement. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special meeting of the Township of Edison Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board is composed of Edison Township residents appointed by the council who volunteer their time in service to the board. The municipal land use law requires that members successfully complete a land use training course administered by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. This board also holds in-house training conducted by our board professionals. Zoning board abides by the provisions of the municipal land use law in addition to our board's bylaws. The zoning board is a quasi-judicial board, which differs from the township planning board. Under the municipal land use law, board members are required to be impartial and are not allowed to discuss any case prior to its consideration before the board at a hearing. All applicants will have the opportunity to present their case before the board, with the opportunity for board members and board professionals to question the applicant and their witnesses. At the conclusion of the applicant's presentation of their case, the case will be opened up to the public. Residents within 200 feet of the subject property will be heard, followed by residents from outside of 200 feet. All residents will be sworn in, will provide their name and address, and they will be given 6 minutes to comment on the application being considered without the opportunity for a rebuttal. Residents may ask questions of the applicant's professionals, and board professionals. The board requests that these questions are asked prior to any comments being made on the application. Once commentary begins, the resident's timer will begin. The applicant will be allowed for the opportunity for cross-examination. Under the law, this chair is allowed to stop any comment that is repetitive or is an attempt to filibuster the board. Further, the chair is allowed to stop any commentary that is irrelevant to the case or prohibited from the board's consideration. Once the public portion is closed, all public comment is ended unless new testimony is presented by the applicant. Following the closure of the public portion, the applicant will have the right of summation on their application. Following summation, the case will go to the board for a decision. Procedure has been followed by the board and similar to the procedures followed by boards of adjustment statewide. Municipal land use law requires the board to engage in a balancing act. It is not required to strictly apply township ordinances, zoning plan, or master plan. As a board of adjustment, variances are granted when appropriately necessary, following all legal considerations. As has been the case with prior boards, this board will see where we are on a particular case if we are in session around 10:30 p.m. I ask that all applicants, professionals, and residents show respect to each other and be civil throughout all proceedings. I ask you withhold applause, booing, or interrupting of anyone while they are speaking. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, first case on the agenda, please.
First case is Z24-2022, Old Post Realty LLC, 604 and 610 Old Post Road, Edison, New Jersey, 08817. Preliminary and final site plan approval is being sought along with the use and bulk variances to construct a 210-spot parking lot for the car dealership. Inventory motor vehicle parking lot is not a permitted use. Max impervious coverage permitted is 40%, where 70 is proposed. Affected property is located in the LR and RB zone, designated as block number 48.02 and lot number 266 on the Edison Township tax map. All paperwork is in order.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, professionals, and staff. Peter Licata of the law firm of Sonnenblick, Mayer and Licata on behalf of the applicants. As you know, we are here tonight to propose the expansion of an inventory parking lot on a property nearby one where we already have a parking lot that has been in operation since 1988. However, that use is not permitted. I have three witnesses that I would like to present tonight.
Mr. Licata, can you just bring the microphone closer?
Sure,
Thank you so much.
I have three witnesses, if time permits, I'd like to present tonight. Bill Lane, our professional engineer, will describe using aerial and other photos the property and its environs, as well as precisely what's being proposed and the efforts that the applicant has made to design the project in a way that is compatible with its environment. Secondly, I would ask John Ray, our traffic engineer, to provide traffic testimony as to the studied and anticipated impact that the project would have on the surrounding road networks. And lastly, our professional planner, John Tykina, will provide planning testimony that will demonstrate that the site is particularly suitable for this use and that the relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public welfare and without impairing the zone plan and ordinance. Thank you.
That objection may proceed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. My name is Brian Schwartz. First of all, I'd like to enter my appearance. I'm representing two objectors. That's Rob Szilagyi and Mary Brugier. They are adjacent landowners to the subject property. I also had been in touch with your counsel and Mr. Licata with regard to the efficacy of the public notice in this application, and I had taken a position through an email that the notice was improper because it referred to not what's called a D1 variance, but rather an expansion of a non-conforming use. And I questioned whether there has been a determination by Edison Township that the present use of a portion of this property is actually a legal pre-existing use. Your counsel was kind enough to consider my request, and she said that, well, I don't want to paraphrase what she said, but she felt that the notice was proper, and so I do want to bring that up. I don't know if there has been a determination by Edison Township that the existing parking in the residential zone has been permitted as pre-existing non-conforming. If there's been a determination of that, I'm not aware of that, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. Mr. Licata did reference it in his opening statement, and I'd like to know if there has been a determination by Edison Township on that issue.
Ms. Shaw?
Not that I'm aware of, there's been no determination. Again, as I indicated in my email earlier to you, which is a matter of public record, that in fact the notice is proper as we know what we are hearing this evening. Nowhere in the notice does it indicate that there has been such a finding, nor is it indicated therein what the proofs will be. You indicated that you're concerned that there are no D1 proofs, but I think that will abide the event as the applicant has not completed their case yet.
All right, respectfully, obviously, I disagree. His notice did say it was a pre-existing non-conforming use, but I guess we'll broach that subject as it goes along. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Mr. Carley has arrived, our professional engineer. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd ask Bill Lane to step forward and be sworn.
Mr. Lane, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And just pull the microphone closer.
Yes.
Mr. Lane, if you could provide some qualifications to the board.
Yes, I've been with Menlo Engineering for approximately 38 years. I've been a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey for approximately 26 years. I'm a graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology with a BS in civil technology. I've done probably a dozen or so projects with Katina since 2000 and hundreds and hundreds of projects across the state and appeared in front of probably close to 100 planning boards and zoning boards across the state.
And your license is all current?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Lane, it appears that in front of you, you have a number of photos that perhaps we'd like to mark into exhibit as they will be providing a foundation for a good part of his testimony about the property and its area. So perhaps if we could have the Secretary's assistance in terms of the next numbered exhibit. Yes, we should be presenting these up there and getting them marked. So for the record, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Lane has two sets of photo exhibits. One consists of 4 pages, which is an aerial view of the site at different scales with and without our improvements being proposed. And then the next exhibit would consist of a numbered aerial photograph showing different perspectives from the property in a 365-degree view, with each of the separate images in different directions numbered to that key aerial.
So we'll be going on Exhibit A3 and A4.
Great. So if we may, the 4-page exhibit will be A3. And the exhibit consisting of approximately 19 pages would be Exhibit A4. And if Mr. Lane and/or Mr. Tykina may approach to hand out copies of the exhibits to the board and its professionals.
Without objection.
Thank you. Yes, we do have an extra copy for Mr. Schwartz, and he will be provided with them momentarily.
How are you? Fine.
I'm sorry? Yeah, let's give them all out, because he's going to go from one to the other. Yes, A4 is the 19-page exhibit.
Yep. Everyone got it. Same thing, same thing.
Three. They're the same as on 4. But as we saw last month, y'all can't see them.
That's A4.
Brandon just went over. See the screen.
Thank you, gentlemen. Did we get Mr. Schwartz's copies? Yes? Okay. Thank you. Bill, you are the project engineer for this application, are you not?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately over how many years have you worked on the application?
This application, about 3 years.
About 3. And you've made site visits during that period?
Yes.
Repeatedly?
Yes.
Okay. And so looking at the Exhibit A3, which you've handed out, I believe the first page is an aerial exhibit, is it not?
Yes, it's called Surrounding Areas Exhibit.
Okay. And in a clockwise fashion, could you list for the board the landmark locations you have labeled in relation to the subject site?
Sure. The subject property is basically in the middle of the site. You could see it's highlighted to the west, going to the top of the page. We have two neighbors to the north. I believe it's lots 1.02 and 1.33. Then we have the First Baptist Church and their parking lot in the rear. Going in a clockwise direction to the north, behind the property is the 100-foot wide PSE&G right-of-way. Beyond that, we have the Ray Cattina dealerships of Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar, and Land Rover, and they all front along Route 1. Continuing on to the east, we have the Szilagyi Contracting property right adjacent to us. And beyond that, we have the Edison Woods development along with the BJ's. Then to the south, we have Old Post Road. And beyond that, we have approximately 200 feet from the corner of the southeast property starts the New Jersey Turnpike.
Thank you. And in this image, the the northerly portion of our site, which is in an arrow sort of shape, that it seems to abut, as you said, against the Public Service Gas and Electric Company right-of-way?
Correct.
And is it your understanding that our client, the applicant, has an agreement with PSE&G to utilize the area that adjoins the arrow-shaped portion of this property to park cars?
Yes.
And have access to the rear of the dealership complex and this property?
Yes.
Okay. And for about how long in terms of years, decades?
I believe it's 30 years, 31 years.
31 years. Okay, thank you. With regard to Exhibit A4, these are photos that were provided to you by the applicant, were they not?
Yes.
Okay, and specifically by who at the Cattina organization?
Bob Gallagher.
And is it your understanding that these photos were taken by drone by an employee of the Cattina organization?
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there any way that the public can see these photographs, can see these exhibits? I don't know if that's one over there.
We have extra ones here. I believe there's 4 or 5.
Yeah, we have several more copies here.
If you want to leave one set for the public to share on the dais, that's fine. But when you present, if you have anything larger, they can view it at that time as well. We don't have anything other than that. They're allowed to present, and I really think, I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Because I thought maybe those were the exhibits, but obviously that's not it.
The bottom one.
We have 4 more copies that the public is welcome to share.
Counsel, if you'd be willing to do that, we'd appreciate that.
Certainly.
Thank you.
I think John, just put one back there. Oh, there's an extra. Those aren't the photos, though. Oh, you want to use it?
I'm going to put on this table over here. And 1, 2, 3, 4 copies of Exhibit A3. I'm just going to give the public a moment to take those
Okay.
exhibits.
You have the same exhibits on the easel as well, right? The same exhibits up there as well, correct?
I don't believe we have all.
You don't have the large size photos?
Of all of them.
Yeah, the photos we don't have an exhibit of, a larger exhibit. All the other renderings we'd have larger exhibits of.
I am getting intermittent connectivity with the screen, and so I've been trying to bring the individual images up there, but not with any real success, unfortunately.
Folks, if you guys can just grab the copies of the photos, review them in your chair. If anybody else wants to see them, do so. This way we can kind of proceed. I'd appreciate that.
So Bill, on Exhibit A4, and if I can just get this to, okay, great. So your photo, your first photo in Exhibit A4, which I now have up on the video screen, could you explain what that depicts?
Yeah, this is photo one on the aerial photo map. And photo one shows Old Post Road looking west. The front of the subject site, which contains a single-family residence, is on the right, and across the street is the neighbors that are on the left.
Okay. And then moving to the next photo, which is now on the video screen.
Yeah, this is photo 7, as indicated on the map. This is a northerly perspective of the undeveloped portion of the project site and the properties that are immediately to the left as you look at them from the site on Old Post Road. It shows the properties commonly known as 596, 600, and 604 Old Post Road. In the top left rear portion of the photo, you could see the rear of Route 1 Katina dealerships facilities.
Thank you. Moving to the next photo.
This is photo 8. It's a higher altitude view looking north.
No, I'm sorry. I don't have the same one you're looking at. That,
Yeah,
now
this is
that's
it.
the one,
Yep.
that, yeah, okay.
Okay, this is photo 8. It's a higher altitude view looking north immediately overhead the project site and the 3 properties to its left. You can see the Katina Development dealership along Route 1 at the top of the page.
Okay. Your next photo is it that one? No. Is it this one? What number do you have?
Photo
there?
9.
Photo 9. I'm sorry, let me just get the right order here. That's it?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, this is indicated as photo 9. Is a northwesterly view from high across Old Post Road and to the left, the west, of the project site, looking toward the residential properties to the west of the project site. To the right is the subject property and the Szilagyi contracting property all the way to the right.
Thank you. Your next number is
11.
11. Let's see, which one is that? That's the rear of that's this one. Okay.
Okay, this is photo 11. It's a southward overhead view of the property labeled on Google Maps as 596, 598, and 600 Old Post Road.
And that is to the west of our property?
Correct.
Thank you. Your next photo?
This is photo 12. It's a wider perspective of the rear portions of the same property shown in photo 11 and taken from above the rear portion of the project site.
Okay. The next photo?
This is photo 10. It looks westerly along Old Post Road. The church can be seen to the right, and Route 1 can be seen further in the distance.
Thank you. Your next photo, is that number 4?
Number 4, correct. Okay, this looks northeasterly along Old Post Road. The Edison Woods multifamily development and the New Jersey Turnpike can be seen at the top and top left portions of the photo. The project site's existing residence can be seen at the bottom left of the photo. It has an S-shaped walkway leading from the street to the front door. The front portion of 614 Old Post Road can be seen in the middle of the left of the photo, and on the right edge of the photo, you could see the front portions of 609, 611, 613, and 615 Old Post Road, who share a common mailbox area at the driveway that's on the bottom right corner of the photo.
Okay. The next photo is that number
Photo 5.
5, yeah.
Okay, this shows in more detail the front of the subject property at the bottom left corner of the photo and the front portion of 614 Old Post Road in the middle of the photo. On that property, you could see what appear to be 2 residential-looking structures near the property's frontage and a portion of what appears to be a commercial structure just a little bit behind the applicant's whiteboard on-board fence at the photo's left edge.
Okay. Your next photo?
Photo 6 is a northeasterly view from across Old Post Road and in front of our site that shows the project site from the bottom left corner of the photo to about middle or so of the photo, and also depicts the Szilagyi property beginning at the top one-third of the photo towards the top right corner. Again, you can see the two residential-like structures on the right side of the Salaji property and larger commercial-like structure further to the left near our client's white board-on-board fence, and further still to the left, what looks like a construction office trailer. A number of vans, pickups, and trucks can also be seen in the photo.
Your next photo, is that photo 2?
Photo 2, yes. This looks north right over the project site's common boundary with the Salaji property. The Edison Wood property is in the top right corner.
The photo after that?
Is photo 16, and this shows the development portion of the project site in the middle and the rear portion of the Salaji property on the right side of the photo. The left portion shows the undeveloped portion of the project site, and behind it, you can again see the rear portion of the Tina dealership complex.
Photo 15?
Photo 15 shows some of the rear triangular-shaped part of the Salaji property. You can see the construction office trailer at the middle right of the photo, and a number of vehicles, equipment, and materials positioned about the Salaji property. The developed portion of the project site can be seen at the bottom of the photo, where vans and cars are stacked in 2 rows.
Your next photo is photo 14.
Is another look at the rear of the Salaji property from the rear portion of our site, and shows the stored construction vehicles, equipment, and materials on the Salaji property in larger scale detail.
Okay. Photo after that?
13. Photo 13 is the rearmost portion of the Salaji property where it joins the project site. Again, you can see more vehicles and construction material.
And just a few more to go. Photo 3, I believe?
Yep. Photo 3 is an overhead view taken above the property that is situated across Old Post Road and in front of the project site. It looks east down Old Post Road towards the turnpike.
Okay. Photo 17?
Photo 17 is taken from the front portion of the project site looking southeasterly across the street to neighbors whose properties lie near to the turnpike.
And then lastly?
Is taken from above the project site looking south and across Old Post Road at the neighbors directly across the street.
Thank you. To the best of your knowledge, do these drone photos depict existing conditions at the site currently?
Yes.
And that's based on your site visits in the recent past?
Yes.
Thank you. With respect to your large exhibit, which is on the easel, I believe, let's talk about specifically what is proposed for the site. And perhaps you want to grab the easel in the meantime. Or, John, can we help?
Closer?
Yeah, I think that would be good.
A little closer?
Yes, please.
We should put the front photo on the bottom there. That should go up because that's the next, the overall plan exhibit. That shows the proposed improvements. So I guess we need to mark this one.
Yes, could you mark that one A5 and describe for the board what that is, please?
This is labeled overall plan exhibit. And this is an aerial with the site plan and the landscaping plan colored over the aerial.
And I think I might, no, I don't have that. But in the meantime, okay.
Mr.
So,
Licata,
yes.
has A5 also been submitted with the packet, or is that something that was provided to the board secretary previously?
Is that one of our, the site plan that's depicted, is that part of our application?
The site plan and landscaping plan was part of the site plans that were submitted. This is that colored up, rendered up with the aerial behind it.
Okay, I would just ask that you make sure that we have properly sized exhibits provided afterwards to the board secretary
Absolutely.
for our records. Thank you.
We will absolutely do
Is there
so.
any way this exhibit could be seen by the audience? I mean, the audience is here. I'm totally in the dark, not seeing this at all.
We could turn the easel so that it's visible to the public as well.
Isn't that the same photograph that you gave it to us?
Yes, yes.
You can put this up, no?
Can you just move it to the side so the public
You
can
can
see
put
as
that
well?
up on the screen, no?
Yeah, yes.
Let me find it. Let's see, which one is this?
All right, that's, no, if it goes on the screen, that's fine,
Where can I find it?
because I don't have a copy of this.
It's not this one, no.
Thank you.
We had extras of those 11 by 17s. I don't know if that,
Oh, do you have additional copies of
did the
this?
11 by 17s of those get handed out? It's the same plan, the 11 by 17.
Everything was handed out.
So is that exhibit that you're referring to now, that is part of A3, is it not? Yes. And, okay. So, Bill, could you direct the board's and public's attention to Exhibit A3 that you previously handed out? This is it right here.
Yeah, this is along with A3 that the surrounding area
Yes,
exhibit.
yes.
This overall plan exhibit is also in.
So that is one of the 4 pages in Exhibit A3. So we have 5 copies out in view of the public, one with Mr. Schwartz and all with the board as well.
Right, so this large A5 exhibit is also part of A3.
A3, yes. Sorry for the duplication of labeling.
You have the digital copy or no, that you can put up on the screen?
Not without fumbling through my screens and
Okay.
making you all wait even longer, so I apologize. What is being proposed here?
The applicant's proposing to increase the parking that's roughly approximately good for 100 spaces on site right now to 211 spaces. We have expanded pavement to the west and to the north. We have a new driveway going out into Old Post Road, a single driveway. As last time we were here, it was indicated that they just wanted a single driveway in. That's has a gate further back off the road, so there's room to pull in and set it back off the road. We're also proposing a new driveway out into the PSE&G 100-foot wide right-of-way, so we can access the Katina dealerships through that PSE&G right-of-way onto this property.
Great. So in terms of the parking that's proposed here, is this for customers? Is this for employees? What is it for?
Inventory parking,
Meaning cars that are sold or leased?
correct.
Okay. And would customers be allowed to traverse this area?
No,
And would any employees be on site after they were finished transporting a car to or from this location?
they would only come on to grab a car to bring it to the dealership, and most likely through the back driveway, through the PSE&G into the dealership.
Okay. So now, before we get to the entrances and access ways to the property, let's talk about how this property fits in within the dealership complex.
Okay.
There are car carriers that come to deliver vehicles for sale and lease at the dealership, right?
Yes.
Okay. Where do they go and where are they received?
Katina has a prep center in Raritan Center. All cars on car carriers go to Raritan Center, get prepped and prepared there.
So they're checked in as received by way of their orders, they're prepped for display and for the public view
Correct.
at Raritan Center?
Raritan Center, yes.
Okay. And then from Raritan Center, how would they get to this site?
They would be driven over to the dealership.
To one of the 3 main dealership buildings that we saw in your photos on Route 1?
Correct.
Okay. And then they would be either what? Where would they be parked? Either there at the dealerships?
Either at the dealership in the PSE&G right-of-way or on this property.
Or on this property? Okay. So when we were here last time, did we have 2 entrances to access this inventory lot from Old Post Road?
Yes.
And did the board express concern as to what those access ways, what effects that might have on the neighborhood?
Yes.
And so in response to that, what were the changes made to this plan since we were last here?
We left the existing shared driveway with the Salaji property as is. That will service just the existing single-family house on the property. We put a new driveway along the westerly portion that will be able to access this property and the inventory lot via Old Post Road. And then we put a secondary access, which will probably be mostly used, out the rear into the PSE&G right away.
Okay, so again, in terms of the traversing of inventory vehicles from the dealerships that are basically in the upper right-hand corner of this exhibit
Correct.
into this site, what is it what's your understanding of, as to how the applicant plans on moving the cars the majority of the time?
Yeah, I mean, currently, what Katina does, once inventory's full on the dealership lot, they bring it and drive it down out the rear of the dealerships onto the PSC&G right away.
So that's right, and they park cars there now.
Correct.
Right now, though, there is no interconnection to this site.
Correct.
Correct? Because we have just the developed portion, which is on the bottom portion of the overall proposed site plan,
Yes,
where we see images of cars in the existing buildings.
correct.
So in order to access that existing parking area now, is the only access from Old Post Road?
Yes, only from Old Post.
Okay. But under this plan with the expanded parking area, we would have the connection directly to the dealership through the public service right-of-way?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And so you talked about the existing residence. Is the plan to keep that residence there?
Yes.
And why would we keep that residence there?
Well, it helps keep the look of Old Post Road as in residential character.
Okay. And on your plan that we're looking at right now, is that residential area fenced in and separated from the inventory lot?
Yes.
Okay. And so then there's, as you mentioned, there seems to be a driveway that is very large, and there's a portion of it that's on the applicant's property and a portion of it that's on the Szilagyi. Perhaps they're two separate driveways, but just kind of straddling the border. So you would not be able to make a right-in past the residence and go through to the inventory parking without passing, is there an emergency access there at the corner?
Yeah, we're providing a fence across the rear with a double gate locked for emergency purposes in case there's any need for fire truck or any kind of emergency situation. But other than that, it's sealed off from the inventory lot.
Okay. And that's the cross-hatched area?
Yes.
Kind of the square?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. In terms of the operation of this parking lot, what are the proposed days and hours of its usage?
My understanding, it's 6 days a week and 8 to 5:30.
Okay. And you mentioned before that there's no customer parking.
Correct. This is only for inventory.
Okay. So given that, are we proposing any EV-ready or ADA spaces?
No.
And that's because they're just not necessary?
Correct.
Okay. Aside from the additional parking area and the through connection to the back of the Katina complex, are there any other additional buildings or improvements that are proposed?
Just the existing garage, the 3,200 square foot garage that's behind the,
That's already there?
that's already there, correct.
Okay. And what is the purpose? What has that been used for, and what would it be used for?
I believe Katina uses it for storage of like seasonal plows or salt, stuff like that.
To keep their snow plow and salting equipment
Yes.
out of view?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The entrance from Old Post Road, that would be at the southwest corner of the property, is that gated?
Yes.
And how is that gate, how does that function? How would that work?
It would be locked off. The only time if necessary, someone came in that way, they'd have to unchain it to be able to bring inventory car in.
Okay. And in terms of the layout of the parking lot, have you provided the board engineer with a geometry plan?
Yes.
And have you also provided the board engineer with a truck movement plan?
Yes.
And that would include emergency vehicles?
Yeah, we designed it for a fire truck.
Okay. Is there any signage that's proposed for this project?
No.
Okay. And again, that's because no members of the public are intended to come here as a destination?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any stormwater management devices or improvements of any kind on this site right now?
Not that currently exists, no.
Are any proposed?
Yes, we're proposing a bioretention basin in the northeast corner of the property to help with water quality and help reduce the flow into the stream.
Okay. And are those, or have they been designed in order to comply with current DEP regulations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. In terms of designing this plan, and particularly along the property's western edge, as it abuts the nearest residential property, tell us about the thought process that went into the landscaping in that area.
Yeah, Currently, our proposed design is the pavement starts 20 feet off the property line. Off the property line, we moved the 8-foot-high solid vinyl fence in 6 feet. So what we did was we put evergreen landscaping on the other side of the fence, so this way it fronts the neighbor, and it's not just for the purpose of the Katina site. So going in from the Katina site, where we have our curb, we have some basic street trees, or parking lot trees. Then beyond that, we have the 6-foot-high fence, and then, like I said, we have the evergreens that buffer that whole westerly property line.
Okay. And so again, you said that the evergreen tree line is against the residence, and then moving into the Katina property, there is the board-on-board fence.
Yes.
And what kind of board-on-board fence is that?
It's an 8-foot-high solid vinyl fence.
Vinyl fence, okay. With respect to the required municipal tree replacement contributions, if this application is approved, will the applicant be making those contributions?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about the site lighting. What kind of light poles are we proposing, and how would they function?
Yeah, originally, when we came with our original application, we had poles mounted at, the lights mounted at 24.5 foot high. Since then, I know there was a discussion at that meeting that we might want to bring the poles down. In this set of plans that was submitted, we brought them down to 17.5 feet. We have outside shields, it's all directly downlit. And in speaking with the applicant, if there's the desire for further reduction, we can reduce those poles probably down to, like 12.5 feet.
Okay. And in terms of the bulbs that would be used, what kind of bulbs would those be?
LED.
Okay. And I believe that the board's professionals made recommendations as to the temperature and color spectrum.
Yes, the 3,000 kelvins, that's exactly what we designed it for.
That's how you designed it, okay. So given the type of light fixtures and bulbs, as well as, well, let's just go on to one other technical detail. In terms of the time of evening and morning hours, does the applicant have any plans for motion sensing lighting and the like?
Yeah, I believe the plan right now, what we propose is lights go on at dusk and till about 8 p.m. And then from 8 p.m. on till dawn, they'd just be on motion sensor, just in case somebody decided to come in or there was some activity, it would be motion sensor. But other than that, we're looking at from dusk to about 8 p.m.
In addition to the motion sensing lights, what kind of security technology does the applicant utilize?
I believe they use video cameras.
And are those motion sensitive as well?
Yes.
Okay. So given the kind of lighting you described, does this pose any substantial risk of a glow in the evening that's going to shine up in the middle of this area?
No.
Because again, we have motion
Correct.
sensitive lights that we've dropped in height, directed downward.
Correct.
Okay.
And in the summer months, they probably wouldn't even turn on unless there was motion because of the later time in sunset.
Okay. Could you give an overview for the board and its professionals of the status of our outside agency approvals?
Yes. Currently, we have Edison Health and Human Services was approved on May 6th, 2022. Division of Fire approved April 12th of 2022. Police Traffic Control Coordinator approved April 12th, 2022.
Mr. Lane, I apologize for interrupting. Can you just bring the microphone a little closer?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Did you mean to repeat those, or we're good?
You're good. You just for continuation. Thank you.
Okay. We have Middlesex County Office of Planning approved January 20th of 2023. And we also have freehold soil certification on January 19th from 2022. We also have 2 pending NJDEP permits, and we're working that out with the DEP. Like I said, they're pending.
Thank you, Bill. Bill, at this time, is there anything additional by way of explanation of the layout or its technical details that come to mind?
No, I think we described it all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lane. If it pleases the board, I would next call.
We're going to open up to the
We're
board for
opening it up
questions first.
to the
Yes.
board, certainly.
Yes, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Davik?
Chairman, So the Old Post Road entrance that you have now will not be an active driveway, correct?
It'll be active for the single-family home and the Salaji property next door.
You will not be bringing any vehicles in and out to the inventory lot.
Not to the inventory
You will
lot, no.
take all the deliveries from the PSE&G access that you have from Ray Catino.
Yeah, we have this, we have the access off of Old Post Road that can be utilized, but a majority of the cars, because they get brought to the dealership, will most likely be brought in through the PSE&G into the lot.
But if you have full access through PSE&G to Ray Catino, back of Ray Catino now, why do you need an access to the Old Post Road?
Emergency access,
Yeah,
we do have road
only,
frontage.
yeah, emergency, that's fine, but otherwise, you can completely let that use go, not use the Old Post Road at all for bringing vehicle in and out.
To give you a further answer, the answer is yes. Bill, by way of further explanation, are there times when PSE&G does some work in its right-of-way?
Yes.
Okay, and is that, in preparing this plan, have you discussed the frequency of that with the applicant?
It's very infrequent, but I don't know if you probably realized they had just redone the lines, the new poles that are out there. During those times, I think they needed a week or two in this area where they asked them not to be there because they needed to do construction. So in an event like that, where it's a couple weeks, they may have to use this, but the time before that, I believe, was like 8 years before that. So it's infrequent, but it does happen.
Right, so next question is how often you bring the vehicle in and out? The bulk delivery of the vehicles.
Our traffic engineer will give you detailed information about the number of vehicles that get transported in and out.
And you say the timings are 8 to 5:30 p.m.
Correct.
So after 5:30, you will not be taking any vehicles in or out.
That's correct.
Or before 8?
No.
Before it,
They only move vehicles during business hours, but the dealerships are open beyond the 5:30 timeframe.
correct, but that, you only can take one or two vehicle out of the lot for
At
your
a given time.
customers, but you're not
Correct.
bringing more deliveries after 5:30.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And your lights are on the dusk to 8 a.m. off, correct?
Correct.
I believe it was 8 p.m.
Motion sensitive.
And there are motion sensors.
Motion sensors from 8 p.m. to 8:30, I understand.
So what type of the movement you are expecting after 8 p.m. in this lot? The motion sensors can go on and off in the nighttime.
We're not, which again is, the idea of not creating light pollution and,
So it would be 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it would stay dark.
correct.
And that's for the summer hours and winter hours, same.
Year round, yes, sir.
Okay. The other question I have is that the new parking lot that you are making is a stone dust with the recycled concrete and the stone, the
Bill,
cementitious,
It's paved,
yes.
and that is impervious, correct?
yes.
And you are open to make it pervious paving by putting pervious pavers? So you can bring your 60, 70% impervious down to 40%?
I could discuss that with the applicant.
Okay, all right. That's for it now.
Thank you, Mr. Dave. Anyone else? Mr. Chhabra?
I have a question. First off, is the two lots, the one in the RB and the LR, have both lots been consolidated?
Yes.
Okay. And my second question is, right now, in your exhibit A3, sheet number 2, I'm looking at the 100 feet wide PSE&G overhead easement. I see that there's a lot of vehicles parked even in the adjoining church parking lot, in their lot lines. My question to you would be that the gate that was proposed, is it going to be closed during the day, or is that the main access?
I'm sorry, if I could just ask you to clarify, the gate you're referring to, is that the gate at the Old Post Road side?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be open during the day.
Old
Chairman?
Post-
Can someone go over and point where we're talking about? So we all know what location they're talking about, please?
Mr. Lane, if you would just mind taking the microphone with you and taking a trip over to the, thank you.
Yeah, but he's saying this would be open.
It's the gate you're talking about here, right, on Old Post Road?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's going to stay open?
No. No, that would not remain open. That would be a locked, controlled gate.
Okay.
So let's just get it clear so everybody's not getting confused. The gate's going to be locked.
Mhm.
It'll have a Knox box on it
Yes.
in the event of emergency.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Chhabra?
So on average, do you expect to use that gate how many times during the day? That Old Post Road?
That's part of our traffic engineer's testimony because the use of that access point goes to the traffic impact. But I believe, if I can give you a preview, it's probably about, he's conservatively estimated 1/3 of his trips, if that's correct. And did you estimate, again, in advance of your testimony, about 30 trips a day? So if he gave a conservative estimate of 1/3 of 30 trips, we'd have 10 trips per day from Old Post Road. That's not my understanding of my client's operational plans, but that was a conservative estimate that the traffic engineer took into account, not to underestimate traffic impact.
Okay, to me, that's a concern because now that's almost a right-of-way between Route 1 and a residential area where there's residents living, and now you're going to have vehicles basically passing through as a right-of-way.
I think that would be a valid concern if that access point were not locked and controlled. It's not going to be available as a public thoroughfare. The Old Post Road gate would be locked. It would be only accessible by emergency personnel and by Katina personnel. So it's not as, we're not creating, we obviously do not want to be creating a shortcut for commuters and area residents to traverse through our dealership complex.
Okay, regardless, 33% of the vehicles for the dealership would have a right-of-way, basically. But, okay.
Mr. Dovey?
As I understand, it's going to stay closed all the time, except for the emergency use.
Except for emergency use or if the PSE&G were
Correct.
not
Blocking the other
available.
entrance.
That is
Correct.
their operational plan.
Correct. Right. So it's not going to be used for daily use for Katina vehicles going in and out. They're going to use PSC&G entrance to take vehicle in and out from the inventory lot. Is that my understanding, correct?
My client has confirmed to me, yes, that is
Yes.
correct.
Okay, so that gate is going to stay closed forever except emergency use.
Okay. Folks, we're going to let them present their case, okay? And then when we get to the public portion, you'll have your opportunity to refute any portion of their testimony. But the board is very, we're going to work ourselves through, and we're going to get through this case, okay?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a concern, which is that
If I may be so bold as to suggest that at this point, Mr. Schwartz is out of order.
I agree.
I have an
You're not
objection that.
Please place your objection on the record.
Okay, thank you. That a lot of the information that's coming to the board is not coming through sworn testimony. It's coming by representations by the attorney who's getting it from someone who's not sworn. The board is going to be relying on information about how this site is going to operate, not from the applicant himself, somebody who can be basically put to the test under sworn testimony, but rather by representations by someone who's not under oath. And I think that's a real concern. I know that the engineer has limited information, he's the engineer, but he's relying on something that's being said that by somebody who's not under oath. I think that's a real problem.
Your objection is noted. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Dave?
I'm
Counsel.
sorry, I know the board is continuing with this witness, and I do have a representative of the Katina organization here who is prepared to testify and confirm the testimony that we have been providing thus far.
Thank you, counsel. Anybody else on the board have any questions? Mr. Chhabra?
So you're saying the emergency exit is 24 feet, double swinged gates, right?
Bill,
Yes, the width of the driveway.
So if it's an emergency exit, would the client be willing to just make it 8 foot right away if it's just only going to be used for emergencies?
What I would suggest is if you want to narrow it up, we should look at what the fire truck, because if it's 8 feet and the fire truck has, he turns, needs 12 feet, it may be an issue. So we can narrow it down, but I wouldn't suggest 8 feet because you'd have to hit that, I mean, it's a small area. So my suggestion is if you would like it narrowed, we look at what the turning template is for a fire truck to get in and make it that width,
Okay.
just to be
that's
safe.
Okay.
Anyone further on the board?
Chairman,
Vice Chairman?
in reference to the lighting, what is the foot candles?
Bill, you've prepared a lighting plan that's been submitted to the engineer,
Yes,
and that's part of our application?
yes.
Okay. And has the lighting plan been designed to be compliant with applicable regulations and ordinances?
Yes.
Okay. And to give as specific an answer to the Vice Chair's question, can I ask you to open your plans to your lighting plan and give him some more specific information as to foot candles, particularly at the edge of the property and where it adjoins its neighbors?
Yeah, along the westerly property line, next to the neighbor, we're at 0-foot candles.
That would be the residential neighbor
Correct.
to the property
Chairman.
is west?
Can you please go and point where that is? Where
Sure.
the foot candles are?
Why don't you take your lighting plan with you,
Thank
Bill?
you.
And then explain by pointing to the exhibit that's on the easel what the intensity shown on your lighting plan is.
Yeah, along the westerly property line here, we're at 0-foot candles. On the inside of the fence, we're roughly at 0.25. Internally, we get up to about 2 or 3 at max internally.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone further on the board have any questions? Mr. Carley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going through my second review report, I'd issued excuse me, a review report in July 2022. The applicant provided revised materials, and I issued a review report, a second review report dated November 29, 2022. I expect, Mr. Licata, that someone's going to add color to Mr. Lane's testimony relative to proposed operations as part of your case.
Why don't we revisit the subject of operations?
Okay, I'm just assuming someone's going to add additional testimony to supplement Mr. Lane's.
We'll, if it pleases the board, we'll bring up a representative of the applicant next to
Okay, thank
add
you.
more detail to operations, yes.
Thank you. Going through my report, Mr. Lane, I'm assuming that you're going to forward your truck movement plan to the chief of fire and the chief of police for their approvals?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's already been done. If I could just stipulate for the record, that has been provided, and the fire and police departments have issued favorable review letters.
Okay. If you'd be so kind as to forward a copy to our office, that'd be great.
Certainly.
Thank you. In terms of, I'm jumping forward to things in my report where I look for the applicant to provide testimony. In terms of, besides the motion-detected lighting, do you have any other anticipated security measures, cameras, things of that nature, guards?
Bill, are we going to have a video surveillance system?
Yeah, I believe they're going to install video system.
And is that motion activated?
Motion activated, yes.
And have you discussed with the applicant whether or not that system is also connected to a monitoring security service?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you.
And continuing forward, Mr. Lane, I'll just ask you to confirm some of your testimony relative to lighting, just to make sure that it's clear. As Mr. Licata said, you don't anticipate having that sky glow, so it's going to be dark sky compliant, the
Yes.
lighting package?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, Mr. Bignell points out that there's some hot spots in the plan. Can you just make sure, double check that you're compliant with the municipal ordinance relative to uniformity of lighting?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Lane testified, and the plans indicate that the quality of the lighting, the LEDs, is going to be a softer color, 3,000 kelvins, more of a yellow light, not the harsh blue light.
Is that correct, Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Thank you.
Stormwater management, the bioretention basin, which for everyone's edification is at the top right-hand, or the bottom right-hand corner of the property. In terms of discharge, Mr. Lane, for the edification of the board and the public, most of the water will not be discharging from there. But in the event of emergency, could you just point out on the plan which way? Thank you. Which way or which direction overflows might occur in the case of an emergency?
The bioretention is designed to help infiltrate water, so it'll perk down through. What we do have is an outlet structure out along the, I guess up in the northeast corner. That will discharge out to the stream ditch that's out here. It's about 12 feet deep. We are actively acquiring a new 15-foot wide easement to get down to the stream, and that's where our discharge will go.
Okay. And that stream is identified as a state open water, so as you testified, you're going through the permitting process with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Very many of my comments relating to stormwater management have been addressed. The one thing that still is outstanding is soil logs at the bioretention basin. You know, obviously, we want to establish the estimated seasonal high water table.
Okay, we'll get those to you.
Yeah, because we don't want the bioretention basin in any sort of percolation issues to affect the neighboring properties.
Okay.
Okay, so make sure you cross your Ts and dot your Is. Paragraph 6 or section 6 of my report asks you to just comply with the municipal ordinances if you have a if you have a transformer, if you have an emergency generator, et cetera, et cetera. Solid waste management. In terms of litter on the site, how do you expect to manage it? Now, it doesn't appear that it's going to be a high generator, but there will be some garbage.
Again, is it your understanding that there will be any activity on this site other than the movement of inventory vehicles in and out of it?
No.
So there will be no operations to speak of beyond the transport of cars, correct?
Correct.
Well, you have a garage for your snow clearing operations. If you know, I don't expect that there's an awful lot of refuse that is generated by that, but what my comment 7.1 speaks to is make sure you have a handle on it.
We could put a small dumpster pad out there.
If it's necessary.
Okay.
The remainder of my report has to do with background information. A fiscal impact statement has been submitted, and I expect, Mr. Licata, that your planner is going to touch upon that?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And then miscellaneous, if the board grants approval, logistics plans, pre-construction meetings, and bonding.
Okay.
And that's it, Mr. Cumba.
Thank
Chairman
you.
Cumba.
Thank you, Mr. Carley. Mr. Carley, can you add your expertise, if possible? Mr. Chhabra had raised the question about reducing the size of the gate on Old Post, and then, you know, some concern was raised as to its effect on fire truck movement. Is that?
Excuse me. Yeah, that's The gate can be reduced, 24 feet. It could be reduced, but as Mr. Lane said, I'd like him to be mindful of the turning motion into the property. Fire trucks are somewhat bigger than motor vehicles. Motor vehicle, the wheelbase is about 8 foot, standard motor vehicle. Fire truck's somewhat bigger than it. By the time you put an outrigger out, and I think one of the gentlemen out in the public's a fireman, the outriggers go up to 20 feet. The outriggers wouldn't be up or out as the fire trucks come into the site. As a matter of fact, they probably wouldn't even be used at all. But that is a legitimate concern that I expect that Mr. Lane will be able to engineer where the gate size is reduced. I can't provide a solid number on that, but 12 foot, 14 foot.
Probably somewhere in that range.
Ms. Chopper?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big concern. As far as, the turning radius of the fire vehicle, you can always, per se, push the vinyl fence back, and it is vinyl fence. It's not CMU, it's not concrete. So definitely feel like, going with a smaller number would definitely help with those concerns.
Okay.
Well, not a problem.
So would you agree to a 14-foot?
Yeah, like I said, I'm just concerned about the turning radius. So I'm definitely agreeing to reduce it. Can we just have a chance to see, and we can work it out with Mr. Carley to make sure that we're not going over than what we need to be.
Absolutely, and even if you, cut down one parking stall on the left or the right and push the fence back 8 feet in, that's gonna give you
We can do
another.
that too, and that'll help reduce it also. Yeah, we could do that.
All right, okay, sounds great.
Just, as that issue's being fleshed out, I'd ask Mr. Lane to keep the chief of fire in the loop on that,
Yes,
because
please.
obviously it would impact his his or her potential operations.
Exactly. I agree. We have full faith and confidence in the chief, and Mr. Carley, we have full faith and confidence in you, so I'm sure that'll get worked out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board? All right, counsel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McNeil?
Yeah, before you go any forward, I still have a few comments I wanted to ask the engineer.
Okay, yes, absolutely.
Is
My
that okay?
apologies.
All right. Like Mr. Carley, we generated several reports for this. I just want to reaffirm some of the things that were said so it's on the record. There's no customers going to this site at all?
Correct.
Okay. Which dealership is it going to be used in conjunction with? All three of them, or?
I intend on calling Mr. Gallagher up as my next witness, so I'd like to defer that question to him.
Okay, because then the next question would be the loading, if there are different carriers, and are you going to be unloading trucks, on vehicles here? Because you really don't do it up on Route 1.
I recall, Bill, did you testify as to where carriers arrive to?
Yes, at
Yeah,
Raritan Center.
could you explain that to Mr. Bignell?
Yeah, carriers go to Raritan Center. They're prepped and prepared there. Then they're driven over here to the dealership.
So there's not going to be any tractor, those trailers with the car carriers
Correct, no.
on this property?
There won't be any,
Okay, ever?
ever. Yeah.
Okay. That should be a condition of approval, Mr. Chairman. You also testified there were no signs. I guess that's the case. The loading then will be just to drive the cars on and off, so there's no need for a loading area. Did we come up with a time to turn the lights down or turn the lights off at night?
Not yet.
I know you want them for security. We lock in a time for
They
that?
did say that 8 PM, and then at 8 PM, it will then turn into motion only.
Okay. And then the tree fund, I calculate that you're going to have to probably put about $23,000 into the tree fund for the trees not being planted on site. That's no problem, right?
The applicant would make all the required contributions that are mandated by ordinance.
And then finally, Mr. Chairman, the pipeline buffering, are there pipelines that run through this? Can you tell us that?
Well, in that 100-foot easement there is pipeline. It's predominantly on the other side, closer to the dealerships.
Okay.
Where the pipeline is.
Is it within 75 feet? That's what the ordinance says.
The actual pipeline to this property, it's beyond 75 feet.
Okay.
But because we're near in the right-of-ways there, we probably would need to have, the PSC&G representative out there.
You need the ordinance states that you can't dig within 75 feet, whether the power company's there or not, unless the board grants relief. So I would suggest that we don't have any problems with them hitting a pipeline, transmission line, that a condition of approval be that the representatives of those companies be there when they are digging. So not just letting it out, but when they are digging, so that there isn't any issues, because we've had them in the past and it isn't. Is that a problem?
No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pino. Mr. Brown?
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but I want to refer to Mr. Bignell's last comment about the lighting and something that was said by the chair. The operation of this business is 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m.
The operation of the
Of the
parking
inventory
area.
lot.
Correct.
Okay. And there's a vast amount of lighting that I can see on the lighting plan, and will no doubt be visible above a 6 or 8 foot vinyl fence, I think you have?
Mr. Lane, did you testify it was 8 feet high?
8 feet.
8 feet, okay. But nonetheless, the light is going to be enormous, one. And then two, I think the question that Mr. Bignell raised, and I like it, is there any difference in lighting from 5:30 to 8 p.m.? Did I hear that there's a dimming of the light or a lessening of the volume of lights?
Yes, sir. And your question is important because, frankly, we don't want to give you the misimpression that there will be enormous lighting. So, Mr. Lane, could you again discuss the height of the poles, the types of light, and the precautions that are being made during certain hours? Because we want to give everyone an accurate understanding of the light emissions that would emanate from this property if the project is approved.
Yeah, right now, we have it currently designed, the lights are set at 17.5 foot high.
Can you repeat that, please?
The lights.
Speak into the microphone and come closer if you
Yeah,
would.
the lights are designed currently.
The light poles.
Light poles, yeah. Where the lights are set on top of the pole are 17.5 foot high.
Based on the plans as submitted.
Submitted, correct.
And you've discussed that with the applicant, and they have agreed to reduce that height, have they not?
Yes.
And what have they reduced it down to, and what could they do?
We can reduce it down to like 12.5 feet.
The light poles, and that is where the light fixtures would be at a height of 12.5 feet off the
Fixtures
ground?
themselves would be at 12.5 feet,
Fixtures.
yes.
And so now let's talk about the fixtures. Are the fixtures shielded and directed downwards?
Yes.
Okay. And would they use LED bulbs?
Yes.
And would those bulbs be of an intensity and color spectrum as recommended by the board's professionals to avoid unnaturally bright light in terms of spectrum and intensity?
Yeah, when you talk about a light bulb, there's all the way to the one spectrum and it's bright white, it's almost blue. And then to the other side is like a yellow softer. So we're just up off the left side where it's a softer, a little bit more yellowish. It's not that bright white light.
Okay. And naturally, after-hours light, spillage, or upward glow is a particularly disturbing thing to people in the area of commercial properties, is it not?
Yes.
And so what, if any, design aspects in terms of timers and motion sensing are we proposing to eliminate that?
Yeah, the plan is to leave the lights on until 8 p.m. So they're standard on until 8 p.m. In the winter time, I guess they'll probably turn on at dusk, say 4:30. So you're looking at like a 3.5 hour window of the lights always on. After 8 o'clock, they'll be motion sensor for security purposes only. In the summer months, when it doesn't even get dark at 8 p.m., the lights will probably only be security. They won't even be on. So we do have a very small window of when these lights will actually be on. And again, at 8 p.m., we're talking about to shut them off. So past that into the later evening hours, they won't be on only, like I said, for motion.
So the lights from 8 p.m. to 8:30 in the morning would only be on if activated by motion sensors. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm listening to all of this and picking up some other ideas about the answers. So the poles can be reduced to 12.5 feet. The fence is 8 feet. You're 4.5 feet above the fence, clearly visible, not only sort of like seeing the light, but seeing the fixtures as well, quite visible, 4.5 feet above the fence, correct?
Correct.
Well,
Okay. And
that's a fair question, but let me pause because I need you to answer that question with respect to the landscaping plan that is proposed.
Well, my question would be, how high is the landscape that is
Yes,
proposed?
exactly.
Initially, it goes in at 8 to 10 feet high. and then you usually get about a foot of growth over the year. So after, probably
understand.
5 years, then you'll get up to where the poles are.
And a couple of other things that in these combined answers about the lighting will be the same. Basically, even though the business inventory lot ends business at 5:30, the lighting will be the same till 8 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have there, what, 2.5 hours of sort of daytime use lighting. And I know that you refer to the summer months. I love the summer. It's 3 months, 9 months of, dusk to dawn is a lot more impacted over the 9 months than it is over the 3 months.
Well, again, it's not till dawn, it's to 8 p.m.
Say that, I'm sorry?
The lights go off at 8 p.m. other than motion. So it's
I'm
not, it's not
more
dusk to dawn.
concerned about the difference between 5:30 and 8, especially, and I looked at this truck movement plan, and there's one home, and I don't know whose home it is, and it's just identified as one-story dwelling, and it looks like number 610. That's one of the houses adjacent to your inventory lot. And there's a lot to be said about that based on what you're presenting.
That home is on the applicant's property.
That home is on the applicant's property. Okay. I thank you for your answers thus far, and please continue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bill, I believe in Exhibit A3, did you have that landscaping plan that you just alluded to, the horizontal profile?
Yes.
Perhaps in answer to one of the last few questions the board member just asked, as it relates to the height of the poles and the height of the landscaping, I believe that does a horizontal cross-section of our property and the adjoining property.
Yeah, it's called buffer section exhibit.
And that is one of the exhibits of A3, I believe?
Yes.
Okay. And so on the right-hand side, is that the exhibit that's up there on the screen now?
Correct. That's a portion of it.
Okay, great. And so can you just walk us through the plantings and the like that you show there?
Yeah, this cross section's taken through where the nearest neighbor is, to the west.
To the west?
So-
The nearest house not owned by the applicant?
Correct.
Okay.
So this shows the cross section as when the plantings and the installation, the construction of the site go in. If you start to the left, there's the existing 2-story house. That's 65 feet off the common property line. Between that, there's some existing trees, deciduous trees that will remain. So beyond the property line into the applicant's site, keep going to the right, we have the evergreen plantings in that 6 feet.
And that's on the neighbor's side of our vinyl fence?
Correct.
But that planting is still on the applicant's property?
Correct. Next to the evergreens, as you going towards the right, is the 8-foot-high vinyl fence, and then we have another 14 feet of landscaping where we're putting deciduous trees, and then the beginning of our paved edge for the inventory.
Okay, so the 2 trees that are in this image right now, the one that's kind of like the cone-shaped evergreen?
Yes,
And what is the proposed planting height?
8 to 10 feet.
8 to 10 feet, okay. And then on further to the right of the page, there is a deciduous tree?
Yes,
And what is the initial proposed planting height of that?
those I believe are 12 to 14.
12 to 14, so that would be effectively in line with the height of your light poles?
Correct.
Okay. And then I believe there's another portion of this exhibit which shows in how many years from time of planting?
I believe we said 10 years after. Yes.
I believe in 10 years, okay. And how many feet per year on average do these plantings tend to
You
grow?
probably get half a foot to a foot.
Half a foot to a foot a year. So conservatively at half a foot, you're looking at about 4 years to grow 2 feet.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. At this time, Mr. Chairman, if the board doesn't have further questions for this witness, I would call Mr. Gallagher.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir.
Can you approach please begin on record.
Sorry. Brian Schwartz, is it the board's practice to allow other people to ask questions at the end of all the testimony?
So counsel, you'll be, after he does direct, you'll be then allowed to call their witnesses for cross.
Oh, to bring him back.
To bring them back, yeah, after he presents their case on direct. Well then, since you put your appearance on the record. We'll then turn over to you, and then you can then question as such.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Mr. Gallagher. Could I ask you to take Mr. Lane's seat for the time being? Thank you. And I think you're going to have to stand and raise your right hand and be sworn.
Mr. Gallagher, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth so help you God? And if you could pull the microphone closer and state your full name for the record, please.
Robert Gallagher with the Ray Catino Auto Group.
And what's your function there?
I'm Director of Operations.
And how long have you served in that capacity?
About 30-something years.
Okay. And in terms of directors of operations, I mean, it's descriptive, but can we give the board more specifically, what do you do and where do you do it for the Catino organization?
I'm based out of our Edison facility. I handle properties, employee issues, our service and parts departments, basically a variety of things as Director of Operations.
And would that include the design of proposed site improvements, expansion, or renovations of dealerships?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you have been Director of Operations, in other words, a key project principal for all of the applications that have been submitted in Edison and elsewhere for Mr. Catino over the last couple of decades?
That is a correct statement. I've been in front of this board, I believe, 7 times.
Okay. So in terms of the operation of a dealership and how this parking lot would fit into it if it's approved, you are fully cognizant and versant with that, are you not?
Yes.
Okay. So in a brief narrative way, could you explain to the board why you want the parking lot and how it would work?
Well, we need it for additional inventory storage, as was testified before.
Sir, you should bring the microphone closer to you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
That better?
That's better. Thank you.
All right. Additional inventory storage. We have a lot on Route 1 on Old Post Road that we've been using since 1988 for that purpose. We need the site. We were out of room on our Route 1 facility. You know, it's a very thin, right along the campus on Route 1. We're doing some renovations there. We're building a new building there. And the site works well for additional parking for our inventory. I know some of the questions that came up, it would not be a public area. It is only open to our employees. We won't be bringing customers to that site. If a car is parked on that site and it needs to be shown to a customer, one of our employees would go get that vehicle and bring it up to the main showroom facility. I believe Mr. Carley asked the question if it would service all 3 dealerships. That is correct. This lot could be used for any of our Porsches, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguars, or Land Rovers.
And as it relates to those 3 facilities, do they have interconnected parking areas and road networks?
Yes, they do. Our Route 1 campus is all connected together.
Okay. And therefore, by way of the, what I'm going to call the northerly access point, which is on the arrow side of the property where the PSE&G right-of-way, you would have access from all 3 dealership buildings to this lot?
Correct. There's an opening on the fence side here on the right-of-way for PSC&G, and we're proposing the entrance on this property side on the PSG right-of-way.
And how far back in time does your written agreement with PSE&G go for your use of that area?
32 or 33 years.
And were you involved in its initiation?
I was involved in the initial, and I was involved in the new terms that were signed in 2003, I believe they were.
Okay. In terms of the PSE&G access to the site, or I'll call the PSE&G side access, the northerly access, and the Old Post Road access, can you discuss that from an operational standpoint and to what degree you would be amenable to restrictions?
Yeah, we could do that. Our vehicles are all prepped down in the Raritan Prep Center. I can address another question that came up. There will be no new car carriers on this site at all, period. Not going to happen. We don't allow them on our Route 1 facility either. All of our new car vehicles are delivered to Raritan Center. They're offloaded on a 7-acre property we lease there. Preps are done there, and the vehicles are driven up. So they would come up Woodbridge Ave onto Old Post Road. We would instruct our employees to come up to the intersection of Route 1, come into the main campus, and then enter this. The reason we're proposing a driveway onto Old Post Road is if we did lose this access for PSE&G, we no longer have access to this property. That couldn't work for us.
And in your experience over the 30 years, how many times has your access from PSE&G been interrupted?
Probably a handful. Peter, you brought up about the new towers that were put in. PSE&G contacted us then. They asked us if we could be off the lot for about a month. We worked it out with them. It was no problem. In fact, we were told we were the only people that worked with them up and down the whole line. The best, we worked with them the best of any of their leasees, let's call it.
Okay. And is there any circumstance or fact that you're aware of that would lead you to believe that that access would be interrupted or lost in any foreseeable contingency?
None, no.
Okay. And then therefore, is it, again, in terms of the movement of the vehicles, comparatively speaking, between the PSE&G side and the Old Post Road side, what is your plan? You know, in other words, to what extent do you propose or foresee your use of the access from Old Post Road?
To start out with, like I said before, we would close this gate off and we would instruct all our employees to come around through the front. This would be a gated off. It could be
Meaning through the
Old Post
PSE&G
Road, I'm
area?
sorry.
You would gate off Old Post Road?
We would gate off the Old Post Road and instruct our employees to come up and go to the intersection at Route 1 and come into the campus that way.
Which is how they go now?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And then again, under what circumstances would someone, one of your employees, actually move a car from Raritan Center through the Old Post Road access point? In what circumstances?
The only circumstance I could see is if this access was not available over the PSE&G right away, we would use this, or in an emergency.
Or if there were emergency vehicles that, for some reason, something happened on this site at that area, they could come in off of Old Post Road. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I would make Mr. Gallagher, oh, I'm sorry, Bob, is there anything else you want to share with the board?
There is.
Sure, please, go ahead.
We're talking about the lighting.
Yes, yeah, let's go again about the lighting.
There's some multiple things I've discussed with some of my contractors. I can bring that lighting down at 8 o'clock to 0 and do zone motion sensing. So only certain zones would come on if it sensed motion, so we wouldn't have the whole site lighting up. And we do have security cameras with a monitored system. We did check with the contractors, and I can bring those light fixtures down to 12.5 feet, okay, from the original 17, was it?
Well, we're currently at 17 and a half on the plan, but yeah, it was
17,
even
right.
higher than that initially.
Yeah. So we did do some investigation trying to get that light pulled down as far as we could.
So would you stipulate to, if it was approved as a condition of approval, that your light poles and the fixture height would be 12.5 feet?
Most definitely, yes.
Anything else you've noted down there?
All right, I got to put my glasses on.
Okay.
Mr.
Another
Chair.
question was the width of the gate on Old Post
Would
Road.
you narrow that down?
If it works out for the planners in the town, yes, I would, and I would also move that back in another parking spot as was requested to.
Thank you, Bob.
I'll go to the board. Mr. Dave?
Mr. Chair, I just want to understand clearly that you said that after dusk to 8 p.m., you also want to zone the lights. So instead of having all lights come on, you will have on motion sensors, it would come on zone.
Correct.
So no permanent light would stay on even after dusk.
The lights would be off. The only
Completely.
time they would come on is the motion sensor would pick up that motion, turn on the lights, and I have talked to my contractor. I can do that in zones also.
Correct. So we have multiple zones, so when the motion is detected, that zone only would come on.
Correct.
Okay, and otherwise, the whole parking lot would be completely dark
Yes.
after dusk. Okay, got it.
Anyone further on the board?
Just a clarification, dusk is what time as compared to 8 p.m., which I heard you say?
8 p.m. Our
8 p.m.?
working hours, yeah.
No, but at that point, don't need 8 p.m. restriction because it's going to stay dark regardless. It would be on motion sensor after dusk.
You see what you're saying? If it's light sensitive, when the sun sets in the winter months.
Yeah, you're going to have, these would be on at different times.
Right. So you would, again, just to be clear, the motion sensors would be activated beginning at what time of day?
After dark.
After dark.
Correct.
Is that sunset dark? What?
Yeah, it'd be sunset when the lots are dark.
So it means that the
So
parking
we're-
lot will always stay dark unless it detects the motion.
And you would have equipment that would work with,
Let me clarify that.
ahead.
Our business hours are till 8 o'clock at the showroom.
at the showroom?
So this light I would have these on sensors till 8 o'clock, where if my people came on, okay?
It can be there for a whole night.
Yes.
On motion
So we would
sensors.
set those sensors to come on when it's dark with light sensors. If my people came on the lot at up to 8 o'clock. After 8 o'clock, I would then ask my contractors to zone it. And let's say it picked up motion on the PSE right-of-way side. Only a certain percentage of the lights would come on. If it was in the center of the development, lights would come on, or if it was on the Old Post Road side, certain lights would come on. I wouldn't light the whole parking lot.
So that can be true even after dusk. After dusk, the whole parking lot would be dark.
Correct.
And you'll have zoned lights. So when the motion is detected after dusk, it would be coming on per zone.
Correct.
So it would be on motion sensors from dusk till morning,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else on the board?
Chairman,
Vice Chairman Gorman?
with the motion lights, how long would the lights be on for once they're activated?
That's a good question. I'll check with my contractor and our security company. If they pick up motion on the security camera, they would then
Well,
call that
again,
into the local police.
Is it going to be a minute? Is it going to be 30 minutes? How long will the lights be on?
I would say probably anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes, something like that.
The purpose of this is for your employee to go pick up a car, correct?
No, it's a security issue too at night, after our business hours. We would have employees could come down to this lot from the other dealerships during business hours and remove a car to bring it up to the showroom. So lighting would have to come on at that point.
Right, I understand that at night, but your employees, when they go pick up a car, if they were to go in and pick up a car in the lot, how much time do they need? Do they need 15 minutes?
No, no. For picking up a car, let's call it 6 to 8 minutes, I would guess.
Thank you.
Anyone further? So I have one question. You'd stated that it's been few and far between as times where you've been limited access along the PSE&G right away. If so approved, would you consider a limit? If there, a 30-day limit that you would only utilize access to the site through Old Post Road. Otherwise, you'd have to come back to the board for consideration.
The problem with that, as I see, Mr. Chairman, is if we do lose this PSE&G, I have a piece of property we can't use.
Understood.
So then you'd have to come back before the board in that instance.
Correct.
And I'm not sure I quite understood the question. Are you saying that if he lost access for more than 30 days?
If there, I mean, I'm throwing a number out
Yeah,
there.
sure.
You can make it 45 days.
Right.
But, just so that there's not an excuse that if it were to become utilized every single day with multiple vehicles coming through or as a primary access point,
Right.
then it'll kind of nullify any decision that this board made.
Right. So if let me just repeat to see if I'm understanding.
Sure.
You're looking for, you're asking the applicant to consider if they had lost the use of the PSE&G access point for a period of X.
Correct.
And X being a period of days, weeks, whatever, under discussion, would they be amenable to coming back before the board and letting you know that they've lost that access
Correct.
point? And
So
they're-
there's a limit. So it's not like you're being granted carte blanche.
And, okay, and so then in terms of what X would be a period of time which wouldn't require them to come back for some temporary work, but if there was long-term loss, so that there was going to be obviously use of Old Post Road as a primary point for a substantial period, that the board would be aware of it. So, you threw out something on the order of 30, 40, 60 days as a date of interruption or period of interruption that would trigger that?
That's a pretty interesting question to answer yes or no right now. That would have to be digested a little bit, because I look at this and I know what we're going to do in amount of trips or travels through this.
Right.
And there's other uses in the surrounding area that do more trips than we do.
Yep.
And there's no restrictions being placed on any of that.
But your application is the one that's before us right now.
Understood.
So, Mr. Chair, let me propose what, you have one set of access from your neighbor, PSE&G, correct? You have one set of access now from PSE&G to this property, correct?
At this, no, I'm sorry, at this point in time, there is no operational access from PSE&G because the
You're
site is.
proposing.
We're proposing it, yes.
Right. I would rather say you two sets of access. So if PSE&G works, only they can block one access, not the both. Work to one access, leave the one access open, let them block this access and work on it. So that you will have always an access from PSE&G to this inventory lot. You have enough space there you can put two access.
Yeah. That would have to be something that the site engineer will look at, but off the top of my head, there's a large grade difference back here.
100%. You have enough space there you can put two set of access.
But if I lose the PSE&G right away, then I have no access to the property. But I would have to come back to the board and get
Right, so if, for
approval
instance,
for
if
access
there
off
was,
of Old Post Road?
if there was a period of time where you lost the PSE&G access, whether it's one access points or two from PSE&G.
Correct, but then you can have
You'd
the,
have to come back to the board. So for instance, 60 days of continuous.
Would you like to take a
Yeah,
short recess for
perhaps
some
if we could.
consideration?
They can think through it a little
I'll
bit
give
more.
I'll give you 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Stand adjourned for 5 minutes.
Here's the thing, in fairness, I'll get over this, but I'd rather at least been told.
Go back on record. Ms. Licata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had a chance to discuss it with my project team and the applicant who's here. We have no objection to giving the board notice of a significant interruption or loss of the PSE&G easement, even though we don't foresee that. We were talking about X days. X, for instance, could be 60. And, the difficulty that we have is, if we gave you notice, and we didn't have that to be used for a period of time or a loss, we still have the Old Post Road access that we would agree to pull further away from Old Post to bring the buffer, closer into our property from the neighbor to the west. But if, for instance, we had an interruption or loss and the board were to say, okay, well, you don't have access from that side, and now you also can't use Old Post Road, we basically have a parking lot that has no access point, and we have inventory within its fence line. I don't think it's in either of our intent to kind of zone the property in utility, if it were improved as a parking lot. But in any event, directly to answer your question, we don't have a problem with giving you notice of any significant interruption, and we were thinking 60 days.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Dave?
That is more so for a reason I'm proposing second set of egress. So the chances are reduced to half that the PSN would block both the entrances.
I can understand the question, so I'm going to ask my engineer to come back and answer that question as it relates to if there is an interruption or loss, what is the likelihood of it affecting either just one or both, and also what the site conditions are that would either facilitate or make difficult or unfeasible the double entrance. So Mr. Lane, may I ask?
Can
Mr. Yeah, go
I,
ahead.
while Mr. Gallagher's in the hot seat, I don't want to be playing a game of musical chairs, so.
Sure.
Strap him in. I got a question.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. So for the landscaping being proposed, are you proposing any sprinkler system? For the
Sprinkler system.
landscaping?
Did not discuss.
Just bring the microphone closer, sir.
We did not discuss that, but if it's necessary, I'll show that.
Did you show it? I'm sorry. Oh, is that on?
Better?
No?
No. Can you hear me now?
Oh, now we can hear
There
you.
we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
He's playing
it has-
tricks on you there, so.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
And I'm
Exactly.
paying them for that.
So-
It has not been discussed, but if it's feasible, I would do that.
So if it's recommended by the board's professionals and your professionals in order to make sure the landscaping lives, you would do that.
Mr. Bugnell? Would you agree that there should be a sprinkler system so that, I was going to ask for a condition of approval that the landscaping be maintained, but I think that, the sprinkler system will assist on that as well.
One of the things that we've been adding to the resolution is that all landscaping be maintained in perpetuity. Because what happens, it dies because it hasn't been watered and they never replace it. So other site plants in town are getting the same treatment. So yes, on the irrigation system, and yes, on the maintaining the landscaping in perpetuity for this site.
Excellent.
If it's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Bugnell. And Mr. Gallagher, you would agree with that?
We
If so
worked
approved?
something out. We have the home that's on the property already. We would work something out because we're not bringing utilities into the site other than the lighting. So
Okay.
we would work something out.
Thank
And
you.
Mr. Carley had a question on maintenance. That lot would be maintained the same way we maintain all of our campus on Route 1, and we do a nice job on that. So
All agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Carley. All right. Anyone further for Mr. Gallagher?
And are you proposing any EVs, power stations over there?
no, so we are not because it's not a public access area.
Okay.
Those would be done at our campus up on Route 1.
And it's because it's for inventory storage only, so it's not for people coming and going on a regular basis.
Correct.
Right, okay.
All right. Anyone further? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Lane, can we bring you back up for a moment or two? Sorry. Regarding the portion of the site that abuts the PSE&G right-of-way,
Yes,
we show one access point at that time.
correct.
Okay. So I'd like you to think about and then answer a couple of questions. What is the feasibility of installing a second access point to the PSE&G? And then, assuming that we had two access points, if there was work or other interruption to the PSE&G area that frustrated our access, or the access, for instance, was lost entirely, is that likely to affect only one of the access points or both, assuming we had two?
Depending on the amount of work they needed to do, but I would assume because it's only a couple 100 feet long that it would probably cover up both. But then again, it depends on how much area they needed in length
Okay.
of an area to work out there.
And again, so just to be precise, the amount of paved area that you're showing here, and I don't know if you have your scale available to you, but you have a dimensional call out on Exhibit A3, don't you, which is also Exhibit A5?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the linear distance of the common boundary line of our property to the PSE&G right-of-way?
You're talking about the length of it along the common property? It's 241 feet.
Okay. So now let's talk about the grade or other topography or other aspects, improvements, utilities and the like that, et cetera, for the feasibility of a double access point along that length.
Yeah, the grade starts to drop off from, I guess, west to east, so it starts to drop down. And we had to pick up a lot of grade along that southerly property line up in that triangle to get back up to grade so we can match the existing grade, because PSE&G is not going to let us cut along their right of way. Down in the other corner, we have a 4-foot wall proposed. So there's a little bit of a difference. We could look at, it would be a pretty steep driveway ramp to come up. It's not totally out of the realm of doing it, but it definitely doesn't create an ideal driveway.
You have 241 feet between you and PSE&G.
Lengthwise, yes.
Correct. If you can put 150 feet apart, two entrances, the chances are for them to block both the entrances would be reduced in half or nil, probably. You can work only in one entrance, finish that entrance, and they can come to the other entrance.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just trying to
yeah, I
avoid
understand what
bringing
you're trying to do.
vehicles
Yeah,
on the
this
Old
way
Post
neither,
Road
not both
completely.
of them, but there's always an alternative there.
Okay.
So it might be helpful to answer your question, sir, if I asked Mr. Gallagher in the two times he testified, when he testified previously, he testified that in two instances over the last 30 years, we had our access interrupted. It might be worth hearing from him to what extent that access was interrupted within the PSE&G right-of-way. Because I think that would give you the answer based on our experience.
It only happened twice in 30 years?
Yeah, come on. Sorry, I'm sorry for the musical chairs, Mr. Chairman. Can I-
I'll allow it this time. That's
Thank
fine.
you.
Bill can't speak to the amount of time we lost access with PSE&G. In the last over the last, let's say 10 to 12 years, we've lost access twice. The first time was when they dug the new pipelines and replaced the 36-inch gas line on the right-of-way, and we lost the complete access for about 90 days. The latest time, within the last year and a half, when they installed the new towers, we lost access to that site for about 60 days and then partially returned for another 30 to 45 days until they were done. So when we do lose it, we lose it completely.
I think that's a more of a reason I think you need to have second entrance.
But if a second entrance on the PSE&G right-of-way wouldn't help us because I'd lose the whole access.
No, but at that point, PSE&G, you can tell PSE&G, guys, use only one entrance at a time.
We can't dictate to PSE&G what they will and will not do on their site.
Isn't he your good neighbor?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. McDowell?
with all due respect, PSE&G is very difficult to deal with, and that'd be putting an undue burden on this applicant to suggest that. They're hard to deal with just opening the streets and doing the things that we do in town, so I'm not sure. It would probably take 60 days just to negotiate with them, you know?
The only question, the reason I'm questioning is just allow one more gate there. Whether you use it or not use it is a different issue.
Well,
It's a fence there regardless. Just put the gate.
So you're asking us to propose an additional gated access point along
for
the boundary
emergency
line?
use, you don't have to come to Old Post Road access.
Yeah. That if so let me, maybe I understand the question differently. You're saying that if PSE&G partially interrupted our access and allowed us to use that secondary access point, that it would already be gated and again, it would be subject to their permission to use that as a secondary access.
Correct. If they allow, they do one, they work on one entrance at a time.
Right.
Your second set of, access and egress, so you don't have to open up the gate at Old Post Road.
Yeah, but would that, right. But I think what we're being asked to entertain is simply the access gate, so that if PSE&G says, yes, you can disturb the grade because we're interrupting your existing access point, and they allow us to grade in that area to use the second gate, then we could have it. He's not asking us to build the grade for that second access gate on PSE&G's property.
Okay, so we're talking about just putting another proposed gate along this line somewhere where we think we could put, based on elevations, a driveway.
Yeah, but just putting gate for the sake of putting it does not serve the purpose. You need to have just vehicle in access, in and out of the vehicle in emergency use.
Which I think takes us back to Mr. Bignell's observation.
I'm just asking you to check it out because.
Oh, we would certainly explore it. I mean, we could, we could make the request. I can't make any representation as to what response we'd get and if we'd get a response. I just can't.
Mr. McDowell?
yeah, not to belabor it, but it's very difficult to deal with PSE&G. and they're in the right of way. So you're talking high tension wires that go through there. And when they're working on that stuff, they don't just work on one pole at a time. They're working through a whole strip, and they're pulling wires and the whole thing. So I don't know how logistically you can say open one, close the other. It's not that kind of construction or that kind of control. And I'm not sure that PSC would be even amenable to something like that, other than saying, for this many days, you can't use it. I don't know what's in their lease, but I think that that'd be very difficult. That kind of becomes an undue burden, I believe. So.
And the 2 times we had to do this with PSE&G, they flat out said, you have to be off the site for X number of days, which may be longer.
And if you remember recently, when they were pulling the lines and doing the new towers, that took them months and months. And they did, I believe, come to our town and got approval to do that, where other towns they didn't. So it's a long process if they're going to be working on their power lines. If they ever take down some of the older high tension stanchions, whatever you call them, to replace them with the newer. So it's a process.
So my question would be, what are the chances they completely block the entrance from PSE&G's side for
That
whatever
could be.
reason?
They
Then they'll
could-
have to permanently use the Old Post Road entrance.
Well, they could use the end. I mean, he's only talking about using it for 60 days. I mean, you're not, then he has to come back to the board. I guess that's not unreasonable. And then you ask him to negotiate something that it's going to be very difficult to negotiate with the PSE&G. Not if they take you off the property for 120 feet or 200 feet. That's not, I don't see them mobilizing 100 feet at a time. They mobilize a mile at a time or 2 miles at a time. So
The current use, that current provision,
That was temporary.
the current agreement that you have with the PSE&G, so they have unrestricted access from their side, whatever, until your lease.
Correct.
Yes.
So they will not completely block you out. They would only block you out for 30, 60, 90 days, but they will not completely tell you you have no access anymore.
No, they will, and they have done that at least twice in the last 8 to 10 years.
That's only for the period of 30, 60 days, not permanently would block.
Yeah, in your.
What does your lease say?
My answer to that would be, like I said, yes, they have blocked us out for extended periods of time, and they are the leaseholder, so they could block us out of there completely.
Yeah, so you have had a lease with them since 1991?
Correct.
And that renews every year?
No, there's no renewal. It's automatic. They invoice us. We pay it every year for the last 32 years.
Okay, but the lease has been continuous since 1991?
Correct.
Okay, and there's no end term?
No.
But they could, in theory, give you written notice under your lease that.
Yes, they could.
That you don't have the access point.
So you are at PSE&G mercy, basically they can tell, will come block you off, and then you would be 100% in and out of the Old Post Road entrance.
You are 100% correct. We're at their mercy with that right away.
Right. This is something different than what you're proposing. All right, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tave.
It is what it is.
Counsel?
Yeah, I mean, so, Mr. Gallagher, you've had use of that access point since 1991?
Correct.
And with limited interruption due to improvements?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they've never terminated it before?
No, they have not terminated the lease.
Okay. And is there any foreseeable reason you're aware of that they are going to terminate it?
No.
But in theory, it's possible?
Correct.
But you have no reasonable expectation that it will happen?
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If the board does not have further questions for Mr. Gallagher, I would ask Mr. John Ray, our traffic engineer, to step forward and be sworn.
Mr. Ray, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just have the microphone close when you speak, and just state your full name for the record.
John Ray, REA, a principal with McDonough and Ray Associates, Traffic and Transportation Engineers. We have offices in Manasquan and Westfield, New Jersey.
Mr. Ray, if you could just put your qualifications on the record, please.
Yes, could you state your educational and professional qualifications?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My field of specialty is traffic engineering. I have a total of 49 years' experience in the traffic engineering field, the last 39 of which have been doing consulting work here in the state of New Jersey. I have an undergraduate degree from NJIT in civil engineering, which I obtained in 1974. Master's degree in transportation engineering from NYU, which I obtained in 1978. And I've testified before over 250 planning boards and zoning boards in the state of New Jersey. I've been before this board on many occasions,
And your
although I
license-
do see some new faces.
We get better looking as time goes on.
Of course.
So
Thank you.
I appreciate that. And your licenses are current and in good standing?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, have you conducted an analysis of this site and this proposed application from a traffic point of view?
I have, and based on the testimony that's been given prior to me appearing tonight, there have been some additional significant concessions made by the applicant, which I can discuss in some detail.
Great. Would you please do so?
Sure. It's been testified to today that the applicant is willing to do a couple of things in order to limit the impact of the inventory lot on Old Post Road. Number one, he has agreed to decrease the size of the driveway from the current proposal of 24 feet, which would support two-way traffic onto and off the property, to something less than 24 feet, subject to Mr. Lane, our engineer, satisfying the fire department that we can get a fire truck onto and off the property from Old Post Road safely and efficiently, and we've agreed to that condition. The second thing I believe I've heard today through Mr. Gallagher's testimony is that the applicant is willing to accept an agreement that as long as the PSE&G easement is open and available for vehicle movements onto and off the property to the dealerships on Route 1, he's willing to accept that that will be not only the primary access to and from the vehicle lot, but the only access as long as it's available. And then that would just render the Old Post Road access as an emergency vehicle access for fire and emergency vehicles, and there wouldn't be any vehicle movements onto and off the property from Old Post Road, assuming that the PSE&G easement is open and available for vehicles to be moved onto and off the property. So when it comes down to a traffic impact, understanding that the property, as I understand it, and our planner Mr. Tykina, will testify after me, is going to testify that apparently 8 single-family homes can be built on the property under the current zoning. One of the things I need to do as a traffic engineer is compare the traffic impact of what is being proposed to the board this evening to what the traffic impact would be if 8 single-family homes were built on the subject property. Under the current proposal, assuming that the PSE&G access easement is open for vehicle movement, we're going to generate 0 trips to and from Old Post Road during a typical day. 8 single-family homes under the New Jersey Residential Site Improvement Standards. Each home would generate 10 vehicle trips per day. So under the current zoning, you would have 80 trips per day entering and exiting Old Post Road versus 0 trips under what the applicant is proposing. Now, I also want to talk about a worst-case scenario. It is my understanding from speaking to Mr. Gallagher, and he can provide additional testimony if necessary. One of the questions I asked him was, on a busy day, the busiest day, how many vehicle movements would you expect onto and off the property to the dealerships on the very busiest day? And the answer was 30 trips. So if in the event PSE&G was doing some work out there and we were unable to use the PSE&G access easement, there's a possibility under that scenario that there would be 30 trips a day generated to and from Old Post Road, still significantly less than the 80 trips a day from 8 single-family homes. So under either one of those scenarios, I believe the board has the ability to grant the use variance from a traffic engineering standpoint, understanding that the proposal that's in front of the board this evening will have a lesser traffic impact on Old Post Road than the construction of a conforming 8-lot single-family subdivision.
Thank you, John.
That's it.
Mr. Chairman, I would make Mr. Ray available for questions by the board and its professionals.
Thank you very much. Anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Ray? Mr. Carley?
I believe Mr. Ray's characterization of the existing uses, traffic generation, is accurate. And this is I'll call it a bespoke operation. It really relies on how the Katina operation, for lack of a better word, juggles cars onto and off of the site. But Mr. Gallagher's testimony and Mr. Ray's testimony give the board something to incorporate into a resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Carr.
Did I say that in English, Mr. Ray?
I'm done. Thank you.
All right, anyone further on the board? All right, thank you, counsel.
Thank you. My next witness I'd like to call is Mr. John Tykino, our professional planner. John, before you sit down, would you just remain standing and raise your right hand and be sworn?
You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And please state your full name for the record.
My name is John Tykina. It's Taikina. I am the principal and owner of All Things Planning and Development in South Brunswick, New Jersey. I received my planning license in October of 1992, and I've actually managed to keep it for 30 years. They told me when I got it, that was the hard part. Like, they give it to anybody, but keeping it's the challenge. So I have had the privilege of practicing in New Jersey for the last 30 years. Most of the time I do this. I testify before planning boards and zoning boards around the state. I've testified before more than 80 planning and zoning boards in this capacity, including before this board. Late last year, though, as Mr. Ray said, some of the faces are new. So it's nice to see you.
We will accept you.
Thank you.
And I think it's interesting that the microphone suddenly works for you, but it didn't work for.
You know, it's one of those things when you're having the conference. You know, you actually turn the mic off.
That's a good idea.
It's one of those things, you know.
You can proceed.
But the delay is tricky. So I'm here tonight to talk about the application from a planning standpoint. You've heard very good testimony from Mr. Lane on the surrounding area, as well as on our proposal, and it's detailed in his plan set, as well as on Exhibit A3, which is up on the board, and I'll leave it there. You also heard testimony from Mr. Ray about relatively low or zero traffic impact in most of the condition, as well as Mr. Gallagher's testimony and concessions about lowering lights, about turning lights off, about narrowing driveways, about pulling driveways in, all things that the applicant has done to minimize the impacts of this parking lot in the RB and the LR district. All of that is good, and I think that particularly the questions that the board asked about light, the things that affect your neighbors are what you're looking at, and and light and sound and activity. And we've pretty well established that it's a storage parking lot with very, very little activity. So from that standpoint, really a very good neighbor. In terms of what's there, it's a luxury. It's a parking lot. They're cars. They're prettier cars than most, but they're cars. Not the best thing, but not the worst thing. And Mr. Gallagher testified about the light, and we can pretty much have the lights off unless they need to be on because there's motion in the lot. Now, there's either motion in the lot because one of Ray Catina's employees is over there getting a car, so you need the lights on for them, or there's motion in the lot because somebody's doing something nefarious. And then we want the lights on so that, one, our security's cameras can see them, and two, the lights are on so that when the police respond, they have good light and they're safe. So they're the reasons that light will be on, and that's when light's a good thing. But other than that, you keep it off. And I think that, the new lights have a kind of a two-edged sword. So it's great that you can put them on, you can turn them off and everything, but they've become so efficient and they're so cheap, it's just easier to just leave them on. So I think the fact that Ray Catina is saying, well, turn them off is a great thing from an impact standpoint. So let me get into a little bit so you've heard, all the discussions. we're here for two different variances, and I would subsume that the second variance is kind of subsumed into the first. We're here for what's called a D1 use variance. So we have a proposed use on the site that is not permitted in either of the zones that it sits in. It's not permitted in the at all in the LR district, and it is conditionally permitted in the RB district, but we don't meet any of the conditions, and because of the LR condition, we're just calling it a D1 use variance. The second variance we're seeking is a variance for coverage. So we're proposing a parking lot. The impervious coverage levels in the RB district are 40%. We're proposing a 70% coverage because it's a parking lot. And I think the two go hand in hand. So I think that that C variance is subsumed into the D, but I'll also provide a little bit of conversation about why I think that it represents a good plan and why I think that why we'll meet the negative criteria for that variance. And then finally, in terms of the D1, we need to make a few findings. And there's really kind of 5. So one is that we're particularly suited for the use. The second is that the proposal advances one of the purposes of zoning, or what's called special reasons. 3 is we need to have a Medici reconciliation. So we need to say, why didn't the council zone for this? Okay, why didn't they zone for it? We have to make that reconciliation. 4th, we have to show that we're not going to have any negative impact, a substantial impact, negative impact on the public good. And then finally, we're not going to have a substantial negative impact on the zone plan or the master plan. So particular suitability first. And again, it's that it's particularly suited for this use, not that it's uniquely suited, not that we couldn't do anything else here, not that it's only suited for this use, but just that it's particularly suited, not to the exclusion of everything else, just it's particularly suited for this. So first of all, the site contains a residence on Old Post Road. It provides us with a nice residential front to the site. And as A4 showed and the picture showed, that our house along, that's located along Old Post Road is a very attractive, modest home that's consistent with our neighbor to the east and is consistent with, consistent with our neighbors across the street. It's attractive, it's well kept, it's well maintained. It presents a residential face to our neighbors across Old Post Road. Secondly, the site is in a unique location, immediately proximate to the Ray Catena dealerships and the GBH district on Route 1. The interconnection with PSE&G is a critically unique asset to this property that lends to its particular suitability. When we were here last time, when we started, November?
I think so.
I think it was November. We didn't have the interconnection yet. We didn't have the interconnection shown. It wasn't engineered. It wasn't shown. So again, that's a substantial change that was made to the application, bringing it here, and kind of why we start all over again, because we provide this interconnection. This unique connection allows delivery of vehicles from the prep center elsewhere in the township into the storage lot without having a negative impact on Old Post Road. So we get to use the property. It's appropriate. It benefits the site on Route 1, but without negative impacts to our neighbors on Old Post Road. And then finally, 2 things. The site is large enough and in appropriate shape to accommodate a parking lot and, as importantly, to accommodate the grading, the drainage, the landscaping, the lighting that is a modern, attractive, environmentally sensitively designed facility within the RB district. It's large enough. We're not crammed in there. We have enough room to be able to operate. We have enough room to provide substantial buffers to our neighbors to the south and to the west. And then finally, the proposed parking will be low impact and is comparatively attractive use to buffer any of the negative impacts on the adjoining properties from the adjacent contracting yard to the east. So we do have a use to the east that is not an RB use, obviously. It's a pre-existing nonconformity. But as shown in A4, it's not exactly the most attractive thing. So between our buffering and our landscaping, we'll actually provide a little buffer to our neighbors to the west and to the south from that contracting yard. In terms of our positive criteria, the proposed expansion of the parking lot and the continuation of the single residential use promote the following special reasons, and I apologize, I will read them. G is to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses and open space, both public and private, according to their respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. H, to encourage the location of design and transportation routes that will promote the free flow of traffic while discouraging the location of such facilities and routes which will result in congestion or blight. And I, to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. So when I did that the other night, I read them really fast, like I was doing a car dealer commercial, and I thought that the court reporter was going to reach over and smack me. She's like, just because you read it doesn't mean I can type that fast. So that's why I slowed down. So it is an appropriate location, as we stated, because of its proximity to the dealerships, because of the interconnection. We meet the highest environmental requirements in terms of stormwater, lighting, and landscaping, and the site will be attractive. It is certainly one of the prettier parking lots that I've seen. In terms of our Medici standard, the grant of this D1 variance must be reconciled with why didn't the governing body zone for this? So while obviously the governing body has continual zoning opportunities, right? They can adopt an ordinance at any time and run it through the process. In reality, in New Jersey municipalities, it really happens at the times of your big master plan, big master planning documents, and now your big master plan reexaminations, for example, and they really happen every 10 or 20 years. So the last one in Edison actually occurred in 2003 and 2004. So in 2003, the governing body at the prior time of the zoning consideration, they would never have contemplated what the logistics of, shipping, receiving, prepping a car, delivering it, getting it ready for sale, all of those things, how it has evolved and come to 2023. The fact that a car dealership, you would never think about it, but a car dealership has to have a whole separate and specialized facility elsewhere in the township, in the appropriate industrial zone, all those things, literally just to receive cars and get them ready to go, get them brought over to the dealers and get them ready for sale. It has become an enterprise unto itself. There's no way in 2003 or 2004, when the governing body was thinking about this, that they had to start thinking about, off-site parking lots and dead storage and all those things. So it really just wasn't something that was contemplated. And that was something that was specifically mentioned in the Medici's decision. So they said, there was specific, one of the things the judges said, like, for example, a use that just wouldn't have been contemplated at the time when zoning was considered. And I would submit to you that in 2003, that was certainly not something that was being considered by the township. Likewise, in 2019, because the township has recognized the extraordinary value that Ray Catena brings to the township and has adopted a Ray Catena Properties redevelopment plan that encompasses all of the Route 1 properties and all the way, reaching all the way around to the service center over on Main Street, is actually all part of a redevelopment plan in the town. Well, when that was adopted in 2019, again, very forward-thinking, recognizing the tremendous value of these luxury car dealerships in the township and Edison's location for that, they adopted this redevelopment plan. Well, in 2019, this property configuration you see before us didn't exist. It didn't exist. Property was owned by somebody else. Nobody would have thought about it in a million years. It wasn't until actually this board approved the subdivision in 2020 that it even became possible when the property was cleaved off from the Edison Woods property. So by doing, again, it all has to come through when you met with a set of facts, but those facts lead you to the conclusion that the council would not have considered this type of arrangement in a prior zoning consideration. In terms of the C2 variance, we think this represents a better planning alternative by appropriately accommodating the use with modern stormwater management and appropriate landscaping. Again, the stormwater management on the site with the bioretention facility, we're going to get good groundwater recharge. We're going to make sure we don't have any flooding on adjacent properties, and it's going to have help us have a lower impact on our neighbors than, for example, would be a conforming use, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then for that C variance, so again for the impervious coverage variance, the rest of the conversation about negative criteria actually goes for both variances. Okay, so it's both for the D1 variance and for the C2 variance. So our negative criteria, there's a couple. One, we don't have any substantial detriment to the public good, okay, to the public at large. Two, that we don't have a substantial negative impact on the zone plan and the master plan. And then finally, we don't have a negative impact on the neighbors and again, the public at large. So there will be no detriment to the public good. I can state that with almost virtual certainty. This is not a noxious use. Okay, this isn't something that has all sorts of negative impacts that are going to impact our neighbors and the public at large. It's a storage parking lot that's well designed, buffered, with a home in the front to provide a residential face. It's in no way out of shape and character, especially when you looked at the surrounding uses that were exhibited on A4. As you went through the uses and went around, again, we have a contracting yard to our east, not a permitted use in the district, by no means an attractive use, though has an attractive residential face, I will agree, but certainly not what is contemplated in the RB. Our surrounding properties across the street to the south are single-family homes. They're single-family homes in different arrangements. I guess they're off of 2 private lanes, but they are all individual single-family homes. We have an individual single-family home to our west. Beyond that, we have another, what's purported to be a single-family home, but it looks like it's, as shown in exhibits in A4, that it had several different buildings, several different uses going on the property and the big circular driveway in front. And then beyond that, obviously, we have a church. So again, it's not, the simple way to put it is, this is not a pristine, pure as the driven snow, RB single-family neighborhood. It has different surroundings, different environs. It's not a pure and homogeneous situation. There are no noises, smells, emissions, and very minimal lighting to impact the adjacent neighbors to the west and to the south. This use is significantly less intensive than a conforming use. So as Mr. Ray said, this is a 3-acre site in the RB district. 75-foot wide lots, you run a street down one side, you're on 75-foot lots up the other, you end up with 8 of them. Okay, little detention basin, have a nice day. So the comparison is 8 single-family homes. As Mr. Ray said, it's 80 trips as compared to 0 out on the street. You have a 30-foot wide street and driveway as opposed to whatever we're coming down to, 15 feet on that side of the property. And again, all the noise and activity and light that comes with big, brand new single-family homes. Much, much more of an impact than this relatively modest parking lot. And then the proposed use does serve as a buffer, as I said, to the adjacent contractor yard. It kind of isolates it against the creek and lets it sit there, and hopefully we'll have good landscaping and buffer for our adjacent neighbors. In terms of the rest of the negative criteria, do we impair the intent and purpose of the master plan, zone plan, and zoning ordinance? So from a land use standpoint, it does not substantially impair the zone plan for this reason. The master plan and subsequent re-examination reports, along with the redevelopment plan for the Ray Katina properties, all support the goals to provide for future growth and development of the rateable base, specifically along Route 1. It furthers goals to support economic development along the Route 1 corridor, which this proposal does support by supporting this longstanding township business. The future land use map actually shows the west lot as multifamily, as what it was, I guess, before it was attached to the Edison Woods property. The plan is largely silent in the RB district, except for modifying the ordinances in ways to facilitate property owners improving their properties. This is not exactly, I'm sure, what the council had in mind, or the planners had in mind when they put that forth, but this is a substantial improvement, which I would submit to you is going to beget for additional improvement. Again, anytime you have an investment in a neighborhood of any type, everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses and improve. Nobody wants to be the ugliest house on the block. And that's just human nature. There is no substantial detriment to the zoning ordinance and the zone plan, as the proposal is well accommodated with only a single bulk variance for impervious coverage, as expected from a parking lot, and mitigated with appropriate landscaping and stormwater management. Interestingly, the RB district actually envisions providing parking for the adjacent GBH along Route 1 as a conditional use. Now, again, as I said, the triangle, if you will, is LR, so we're kind of cut off from that. But the fact that, from a negative criteria standpoint, it's certainly not a substantial impairment of the ordinance if the ordinance envisioned this exact use. All right, it said, yes, we're going to have instances where the GBH needs to be supported from adjacent uses. So again, we're not meeting those conditions, not allowed in the LR, but it's the standard is a substantial impairment. And in no way, shape, or form is this a substantial impairment of that ordinance. And then finally, we do not expect any site issues from the site itself. There's more than adequate landscaping, lighting, and fencing. The lighting is being well managed with lower heights, motion detection, and limited its use. The impervious coverage is slightly increased, but it's well accommodated with the landscaping and stormwater management. And the existing residence provides an appropriate residential face to the site. So for those reasons, we believe the board has the ability to grant the relief requested, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, John. One other question for you. Did you prepare and submit a financial impact statement?
Yes.
And could you address some of those points for the board?
Certainly. If I can find it. Certainly. So we submitted a fiscal impact statement dated December of 2022. This is fairly standard for all the projects in the town. For this site, we're estimating that there is we don't have any new residential units, so there'll be no projected increase in terms of residential services on the site, just what exists today. Likewise, there'll be no additional units and no additional school impact. In terms of revenues, we project the estimate of the total project to be $1.75 million. That would yield to a tax assessment for the completed development approximately $688,000. That would compare with a current assessment of about $350,000. So we're just about doubling in terms of the value. So the project will generate approximately $9,369 for the municipal purposes, $581 for the library, $21,000 for the school district, $6,740 for the county. This is an increase of over $1,700 in revenue for municipal purposes, $100 for the library, $4,000 for the schools, and $1,200 for the county when compared to taxes billed and paid in 2022. Municipal costs, we expect that this project would demand the current $904 in municipal spending. So we're not going to have any increases in spending impact. So the net, for the purposes of municipality and the library, there will be a positive net flow of $1,870 For the municipality, for the school, a positive net flow of $4,616. And in summary, the proposed project will add a nominal amount of revenue to the township with no change in required services for the property.
Thank you, John. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd make Mr. Tykina available to questions by the board and its professionals.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the board have any questions?
I
Mr.
don't
Stoddard?
know, this question is for Mr. Tykina. At this point, are you using lot number 610?
Are we using lot number 610? Yeah, yes, 610 is the existing house on the property, yes.
Okay, where is the entrance for that property?
What is the?
Where is the entrance?
It's on the right, on the shared driveway between the contracting yard to our east and the house. There's a shared driveway that's there today. That's what's used. We would continue to use that for the house.
Continue to, and then once the new proposed site, once that is done, you're gonna merge both together, both the properties.
The house stays isolated. Again, you may not have been here the last. So we had previously proposed using both driveways. The board said we'd prefer if you left the house driveway alone and let the house just access off of that side. So we made that modification. We have our westerly driveway that'll be our emergency access onto Old Post that'll be closed and gated and locked and all the things we've talked about and negotiated. Primary access from the dealerships via PSE&G. The house stays exactly as it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stoddard. Anyone further on the board?
Mike, a couple of things. Mr. Tykina, thank you for your testimony. You said a couple of things, but I just want to, in reverse order, address what my colleague said. House number 610, Mr. Latika?
Licata, sir.
Licata, I'm sorry, said that it was the applicant's land.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Is there any plans to demo that house?
No.
It's going to remain?
Yes. It's
Okay.
it's an appropriate residential face to the neighbors. So it's a house, it's used, it's occupied by an employee. But the best buffer for any use is a use just like yourself. So you like it when you look across the street, you're in a single family house on the south side of Old Post Road. You like it when you look out your neighbor, you look out your window and you look at a house. That's a better sight than anything else we would do. It's the best face. And actually, it's a face that's appropriately used on the Salachi property to the east. They have a home that fronts on it. And again, presents your residential face.
Mr. Tykina, also on the truck movement plan I'm referring to, where I see house number 610, is there fencing from bordering the house's land and your parking lot?
Yes, it is now proposed, as shown on A3, that there is a fence that'll wrap around, essentially around that property on the, it starts on the east, goes to our north boundary, and then wraps around on the west side.
Okay, so I guess, I don't know, I wasn't planning to go here with this 610, but because my colleague brought it up and it gave me some ideas. So the access to house number 610 is currently used for the house.
Yes.
But there's there's a fencing around, so it's separated from the parking lot. Okay, and you're not planning to demo it?
Correct.
Okay, so let me get to the questions that I was planning to ask you. I heard you say a couple of times that you were talking about the positive aspects or not detriment to the public good. You also cited that it wasn't contrary to the master plan, and you also said that it didn't violate zoning. If I have most of that correct.
I'll correct you this much. The standard is a substantial detriment to the public good. Not that there's no impact, but a substantial detriment. And then it's that there's a substantial impairment to the zone plan or the master plan. Not that just that you don't comply. Of course we don't comply. We're at the zoning board. Okay, if we complied, we'd be at the planning board. So it's a standard, and I apologize. I I make it a rule to never correct a board member, but
No.
it is
That's who we are.
very
We're not
clear to
infallible.
use precise language in terms of what the standard of review is for the board.
I thank you for that. I was close, and I
Yes.
appreciate it. And the reason I even brought it up is because in Mr. Bignell's summary here, January 17th, one of the things he cites is, as a recommendation is that there should be testimony relative to the substantial detriment to the public good. The only public good, what I heard, is it's not a detriment because instead of 8 houses using 80 trips, Katina is only going to use 30 trips. But other than that, what else is beneficial to the public?
It would be 30 if in some unlikely event we end up using the driveway. The proposal at the moment, how it's being used, is 0. So your comparison on a traffic standpoint is 80 to 0. So I would submit to you that 0 trips has some public benefit on Old Post Road. The other benefits are we're providing appropriate buffering to our neighbors, again, our residential face, and we're providing a buffer with a quieter, less intensive use to our, industrial neighbor to the east in the contracting yard. So by doing those things, they have some public benefit.
And John, in your
Fair enough.
opinion, is it also a public benefit to provide stormwater management where there is none currently?
Correct. So additional stormwater management that takes in not only our additional coverage, but also the existing coverage that's there.
Because our stormwater runoff is not managed at this time.
That is correct.
Yeah, but the current use of the land, you don't need stormwater management because it's a pervious land, correct?
Half of the site is used as an existing parking
10%,
lot.
15% is pervious land at this point. How much is the impervious coverage you have now? 90% of land is the pervious land, correct?
Correct. Our existing impervious is 37%.
Correct. So in RB zone, they allow 40%. You are proposing 70%. If I'm hearing your testimony correct, you said only slightly increase. 40% to 70% is not slight increase.
Okay.
It's almost double. So what I propose is that I want some kind of permeable pavers on at least 10, 20% more, so your 40% required becomes 50% and not 70%.
And I believe Mr. Lane's testimony is that our client, he will take that up with his client and investigate ways to do
So
that.
the answer is yes or no?
I don't make that answer. That's
I'm asking.
that's above my pay grade. I'm limited till I can give you another shrub, okay? But when we start getting the pervious pavement and those things, that's the definition of above my pay grade.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is there an answer?
The answer is that the applicant can look into it with its professionals, but isn't prepared at this time to make any representations or outright stipulations.
We'll think about it. We'll look into it.
So it would be a part of conditional approval if need be.
If there was a consensus of a board to impose the condition, it certainly would be within its rights to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davik. Anyone further on the board? Ms. Chopper?
As previously mentioned about the house number 610, it's brought to my attention that so the driveway that's proposed to the right side of the property, looking at the east side for the house, that's going to be just used for the house, correct?
Correct.
And that gate's going to stay there, the emergency gate, 18 foot?
Yes.
Okay. And that's going to be used just for fire purposes, no in and out?
Emergencies.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. It's a shared driveway, so we share it with our neighbor. So that's why we didn't propose to limit it at all, because if we were to limit on our side, it would have a negative impact on our neighbor. We don't want to do that.
No, but that 18 feet is part of that driveway. So my question is that's the emergency access, or is that the one that's west of it? Is that the emergency access?
No, the emergency access shown on A3. Can you see? Oh, you can see. It's not big enough, but you can see it. No, that's on the east side would be the bottom of this drawing. There's be an emergency access gate there, and then there'll be the western access that's up on Old Post Road. That'll be another emergency access.
So there'll
But
be
there'll be
two
two.
emergencies and one regular.
Yes.
Okay.
You good, Mr. Chauber? Thank you. Anyone else from the board? Mr. Bugnell? Do you have any questions? Thank you very much. So I have a question, and Mr. Licata, you can direct to who on your team could answer this. So with regard to 610 Old Post, I'm assuming there's a rental agreement in place for it? That there's a tenant?
I understand it's been, it's lived in, has been lived in. I'd have to ask Mr. Gallagher to testify.
He was
whether-
already getting up, so yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
That means I can get down.
Yeah, he's
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In answer to your question, sir, that's the home that's at 610 is rented to Mr. Katina's niece. She's been there, I believe, 17 years right now. And there's no plans on demoing the home. There's no plans on evicting her. She will stay there for quite some time.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Mike, I just have I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. This 610 house, which seems to be a topic of conversation, and Shivam's question about the shared driveway, I'm a little confused. I'm looking at the drawing on your truck plan here. This? Okay. But it's fenced in, so it's shared, but I don't get that. How is it shared if it's isolated?
Yeah, I think we need to bring my project engineer back up to answer that question. Bill, I think what the board member is asking is does our plan show that we're fencing in an area that's common driveway, or are we only fencing in area that is our property?
Mr. Licata, and further,
Yes.
if you're fencing in your property, then there's nothing shared. That's my question.
Yeah, the fence starts back probably 100 feet or so off the road is where it cuts across. There's a shared driveway all the way up into that point, just about.
So, yeah, okay. So can you clarify on that exhibit, Bill? Maybe we need to have John shrink that down a little bit more. Okay. And pan it up a little bit more. No, I'm sorry. Move the image up so we can see the whole.
That's good.
Can we see the whole of the driveway? Yeah. Okay. So, Bill, are you testifying that the shared driveway portion,
Go right to here.
okay,
It's a fence.
is the driveway that is at the southeast corner of our property, right?
Yes.
And the southwest corner of the adjoining Salaji property, and extends inward, but ends before we propose any fencing that isolates either the 610 residents or our proposed parking area.
Yes, as you get to the end of the shared driveway, you can either turn left to go behind the 610 house, or you turn right to go into the Salaji property to service those the two homes and the construction building in the rear.
Okay. I feel satisfied with the response. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the use of that shared? What's the use of that shared driveway? What was it going to be used?
It's been in existence since, I don't know. when
So
this was
Bill,
built in the
is it your
70s.
understanding that the driveway is used for the residents at 610, as well as by the owners of the adjoining property, the Salaji property?
Yes.
Okay.
Just for those two properties
Yes.
only?
Okay, all right. Everyone good? Further questions? Mr. Dada? Good?
Mr. Chairman, right now there are cars stored in lot number 610, right?
The answer is I could stipulate yes, but Bill, when you look at that exhibit that's on there, the property has existing storage where cars are shown on the bottom portion of the color illustration that is up on the screen?
If you go to the existing conditions exhibit, you can see our properties kind of shaded back, and that gives you what's currently out there. There's You can see the string of cars behind the garage.
So if you look at this, I don't know if you can see the screen that's behind you, but the screen in front as well. Bill, the 610 residence, would that be toward the bottom left-hand corner of the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And then moving into the middle of the page, there's the existing block building that you testified is used for storing snow plows and salt and spreaders and things like that, right?
Correct. Yes.
And then behind that, you see stacked parking. All of that is the existing parking facility that's already there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and how are the cars are stored? Which entrance are you using? The single family
The
entrance?
existing shared driveway, yes. That's the only way in and out of there currently.
Okay. Going forward, you can't use the same entrance.
We're gonna close that off.
You're going to close that one?
Yes.
That will be used only for the single family?
Yes, and Salaji next door.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Trevor? So you're not going to close it off because it says proposed emergency gate, right?
It's closed off beyond where 610 parks. That's where it starts to close off on our property.
Okay, but my question is that the current gate that is there right now, that same location will be an emergency gate. Right now, it's a current gate, it'll be an emergency gate.
Yeah, currently, it's an existing gate that's open to bring inventory in and out.
Correct.
In the future, that will be an emergency-only gate.
Okay, and when you say shared driveway, in this picture, we're only referring to the property of 610. The solid dashed line, that's the property boundary, and we're only looking north of it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just clarify.
All right. Everyone else? Anybody else? All right. Mr. Licata.
Mr. Chairman, that is our affirmative case, and we would naturally reserve our right to cross-examine and call rebuttal witnesses.
Okay. So given the time of night, and there is a good number of public heard, and once we go out to the public, we would like to hear the entire public completely. So we're going to ask if this can be carried for another night. Mr. Schwartz, if you could please just stand up. Just get involved in scheduling. No, come on to the podium. There we go. You're eager to jump up all the other night. Now you're
You intimidated me so much, I didn't want to bother you anymore. If not, listen.
I'm glad I still got it.
You do, and obviously, I have a good amount of questioning of the witnesses to do. I'm sure the rest of the public would like to also, but I do have a significant amount of inquiry.
So given that and given the amount of the public, I'd like to give you that respect that, and also give their board respect that we're not having a 3 a.m. night here.
And the fact that I'm obviously not a young man and, it's 10 o'clock.
It's past my bedtime too. Madam Secretary, do we have another date for this to be carried to?
The earliest date we have is March 21st.
March 21st. Mr. Licata?
March 21st, I am available. My applicant is available. My traffic engineer is available. I'm sorry.
I just scheduled another meeting this morning that was carried from tonight.
With all due deference, we're available. You're available?
I mean, I'm usually not that busy, but March 21st, I do have another, yes, I do. I'm sorry.
Okay. Just give us a second, please. We're just going to look for another date.
I mean, March 28th is fine, April.
We'll take a look.
Sorry about that.
And if he moves in 2 weeks, it's not. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Yeah. They hardly ever do. I can ask my other divisions that. Okay, I'll ask them if they want it.
So it would be April 18th.
April 18th?
Fine.
You're good? Mr. Licata?
I'm assuming a special meeting is out of the question, Mr. Chairman. I know we've accommodated this schedules before for availability.
Yeah.
It does, Council.
Mr. Licata.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McDowell?
Yeah, we already meet twice a month. To add a special, we have a real hard time getting this room, so it makes it very difficult
And I can
with all
understand
the other
it's-
stuff, so it's really hard to reschedule.
And I understand the burden on the volunteer board members and professionals.
Right now,
Yeah.
you're the first case on April,
April 18th.
so,
Yeah, my client saying April 18th would certainly be acceptable. And I'm assuming we'd be carrying that without further public notice.
Yes. Mr. Schwartz?
That's fine. May I ask, I asked Mr. Ray, he said he filed a traffic report. I didn't get a copy. May I ask that perhaps one can be scanned and emailed to me?
Our professionals take care of that.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, for everyone in the room and for anyone at home listening, this case will be continued on April 18th. No further notice is required. I'd like to thank the applicant and their teams of professionals. I'd like to thank the public for sticking out tonight and for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, is there anything else before the board?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Board stands adjourned.